Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to BRAP. It is Friday, June the 13th. It's Father's Day weekend. Just want to give a big shout out to all the dads out there. Hopefully, the dads, if you're a gaming dad, hopefully you get some gaming in this weekend. I know I will try. I actually may go out. Believe it or not, BRAP may go out and buy a PlayStation 5. May trade the last Xbox Series X that I have and the launch PlayStation 5 and go ahead and get the PS5 Pro for none other than Death Stranding 2, which comes out in about 2 weeks. What's going on, AC? And Hero Down Under. By the way, do me a favor, hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Do that YouTube thing. Considering subscribing, hitting the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live really helps out the channel. And again, share the link. I just dropped the link in the live chat. Let everyone know we're live. Share on your favorite social media platform, whether it be at X, Blue Sky Social, Facebook, wherever you hang out. But I'm actually thinking about getting a PlayStation 5 Pro. And in part, Death Stranding 2. I mean, it looks fabulous. I mean, Death Stranding 2, I mean, the Decima engine, I mean, wow. It's just, there's that scene on the beach, Death Stranding 2, and, there's just something unique about Kojima games. Something really unique about Death Stranding. And I played and beat the first one. And I got to say, like the just memorable characters, acting. There's Death Stranding to me had a combination of stealth elements, elements of like psychological thriller. Guillermo del Toro's in there, and so is actually in the game. But there's just some really memorable moments in terms of the voice act, the actors, or the script writing, or the script, and just the dialogue between the different characters. And you find out who the BTs are, and you find out who the baby is. It's just, I mean, it is just a really good game. It does start off slow. I mean, I will say that, at least for me, it did. Maybe others feel differently, but I thought it did start off kind of slow and then really picks up later on in the game. So, but it was one of my favorite games when it came out. So definitely looking forward to Death Stranding 2. And so that might be the reason why I go and pick up a PS5 Pro this weekend. We'll see. So, so we're going to talk about the Xbox Ally X, or ROG Xbox Ally X, to discuss inside Xbox's Unification and PlayStation's Counterplay, which PlayStation talked about Xbox's strategy and their own strategy today, as Sony had their business segment. I can't even talk today. They had their business segment presentation today, where they went over they went over their games and network services segment, as well as other aspects of their business. It just wasn't about games, network services. And then what's going on, Nate? We should have Nib joining us here in a bit. And Creative Kofi might be joining us as well. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make it, but he said he would try. But we'll have Nib here just a bit. But so what were we saying? I didn't catch the I didn't check. I didn't catch the questions in the chat there, Nate, for that investors the fireside chat. Here, Donna, what was your question? Does it mean back offices and services like HR, accounting, IT being merged for all most studios, or something in that structure, like region by region back offices instead of studio specific? Falky's not here, but what did Herman mean by global studio and creator network supported by central functions and process to manage costs and maintain financial discipline? Yeah, that's to me, that would mean that there's some of those back office functions have been centralized as opposed to being decentralized. So you no longer have a duplication of efforts or positions. You streamline a lot of those back office functions like HR, accounting. Um, some of that stuff may be offshored as well, especially accounting. And there could be, from an IT perspective, right? Too, some of those things would be offshored and centralized. But I'm not exactly sure if that's specifically what Herman Holtz meant. Falke. I did ask Falke to join us, and he wasn't able to join us today. But no, if you're thinking about a decentralization from that perspective with HR, accounting, and IT, then yeah, I mean that would make sense. You wouldn't have those functions split. You would have a central hub that has its that supports everything, right? The entire business. Like, why would you have that separated? I've seen companies do it. My company's is streamlining and centralizing some of its own operational functions right now. And then some of those functions are being offshore to centralized offshore to save money, things like that. So again, I didn't see the event live, but that maybe if that's what he meant, maybe I mean if that's what he's I guess what I'm trying to say here, that may be the case here. But again, I can't say for sure because I didn't watch the actual event. Nate, what do you mean all the quotes? Oh, Nate, I'm going to send you an invite. I don't know if you can join. It looks like you watched the show. So I'm going to text you. I'm going to DM you an invite to the show, Nate. I don't know if you can make it, but if you can, sounds like you watch it live. But I just sent you the link for the StreamYard, Nate. So if you can join, great. If you can't, I completely understand. But they restructure for better management. Okay. Yeah, I mean that would make sense. I mean, what you're saying would make sense, Nate. Oh, okay. You were down there. Okay. Yeah, so we'll get into that here in a little bit. And oh my gosh, Nate. By the way, I'm still playing. I'm playing my second playthrough of Clear Obscure Expedition 33. It's funny, actually. One of the mothers of my daughter's friend um, was telling me that her friend, because I told her, I was like, oh, I'm going to be on Crossfire, or I'm getting ready to do a podcast. She's like, oh yeah, what are you podcasting about? I was like, oh, I'm going to go geek out, talk about video games. And she's like, oh yeah, what are you playing? Or what are you going to talk about? Ah, different video games and stuff, topics. She goes, oh, I have a friend he can't stop talking about this game. It's Expedition 33. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah. She's like, you know that game? I was like, absolutely, I know the game. And then I beat it once and I'm playing the second playthrough right now. And she's like, really? I said, yeah. And she goes, my friend can't stop talking about it. She said he discovered it on his PC and gave it a shot and couldn't put the controller down. And I said, well, that makes a lot of sense because it's one of the best games out there right now. I think it's one of the best games out there. It's one of the best games this generation. So it's always cool to hear. And she was telling me like he was talking about it and giving her a little bit of a background of the story and things like that. So it's just really cool when you have conversations with people who know other gamers, right? And you hear about the games that they're playing. Um, so it's really cool. But yeah, so Nate, I'm playing Expedition 33 the second time, and I am discovering new locations that I didn't discover or go to last time. Actually, there's a optional boss that is located where the paintress was located, and I went back there, and the only reason I knew about this because I had read somewhere online. I don't know if you go back to where the paintress was. there's a boss will spawn there, an optional boss. I went back and fought that optional boss, and I just can't stop playing it. And then there's another boss. It's like sits in the water. I beat that boss, and then there's the floating manor, and I didn't know that was there, and I discovered it, but I probably need to level up a little bit more to go there. So anyhow, we got a Nate here. And Nate, what's going on? Oh, dude, I cannot hear you at all, Nate. Oh man, you're botting really bad. Like it's coming in very low. Can everyone hear Nate in the live chat? Or is it just me? I think he said I'll be right back. He sounded like a cartoon character. Yeah, he sounded like a chipmunk. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like he sounded like a chipmunk. All right. So Nate's going to come back here in just a minute. All right. So one of the things I like to talk about every year on BRAP is the Game Developer Conference, the GDC 2025 game industry report, or I should say the annual game industry report. So I always find it to contain very interesting information about the gaming industry, right? The industry that we partake in as consumers. And see, Nate, I'll rejoin in a second. All right, no worries, Nate. Let me blow this up here a bit. Everyone can see that. So here we go. Developers game industry report for GDC. The game industry continues to grow and change along with its players, while the industry remains largely white and male. A few key data points show the developer community is becoming more diverse. Gender diversity in the game industry has seen a notable shift over the past few years. Women and non-binary developers now make up 32% of game developers, compared to 29% last year and 24% in 2022. Men still make up two-thirds, 66% of developers. However, the number was 75% in 2020, meaning we've seen a 9-point change over the past 5 years. LGBTQ representation among developers has also increased, with 1/4 of respondents identifying as LGBTQ plus, up from 21% in 2024. Nearly half, 43% of 18 to 24-year-old developers identify as LGBTQ, and women developers are almost 4 times more likely than men to do so. So this is the breakdown here. Gives you just again a little insight into the makeup of the gaming industry. Let's see if Nate's back in here. No, he's not back yet. All right. All right. In terms of countries with the most respondents, all right. This year's State of Game Industry report includes developers from 86 countries spread over 6 continents. United States has the largest concentration of respondents. Not surprised, considering the amount of developers here in the U.S. Let's see if Nate's not back yet. All right. You see the response here: 58% United States, UK 7%, Canada 6%, Australia 3%. So it gives you a little bit of a breakdown. All right, let me move past this here. All right. So one of the things, layoffs have been a thing, right, in the game industry. I know it's something that's been talked about quite a bit post COVID. GDC did actually report job roles here, and I thought this was kind of interesting. They say despite the surge in layoffs, the breakdown of job roles in the game industry has remained consistent. Top roles are in game design. I can't say I'm too surprised by that. Programming and production and team management, like 2024. The majority of respondents, 59%, are either solo developers or work for studios that are the primary developers of their games. When it comes to job roles, newer developers are more likely to have careers in game design, while those more experienced tend to favor production and team management. Can't say I'm surprised by that, because I think that, I think about kind of the roles that I hire for. you tend to see individuals who may have those who have more experience, right, tend to end up, favoring either project management or just management in general, right? All right, let me move on here. All right, this is also interesting too, as relates to layoffs. Oh, here we go. All right, layoffs have become part of the industry with announcements now a weekly, if not daily, occurrence. About 11% of respondents reported being laid off in the past 12 months. Altogether, 41% of game developers have been impacted by layoffs this year, up from 35% in 2024. Wow, that's pretty significant. Seems like a lot of people. Developers are feeling the weight of this across the board. Last year, a majority, 53% of developers said there have been no layoffs at their companies. Today, that number is down to 43%. Oh, maybe I read the previous one. I think 40% of developers impacted. Oh, have been impacted. That's okay. That's up. But then they're saying more developers saw their direct colleagues being laid off than workers and other teams and departments. Okay. You look at where the layoffs, what roles were impacted by the layoffs? Narrative, product team management, visual arts, programming, engineering, game design, business, and finance. Not surprised to see business and finance on the lower end there. Your bean counters are there. What's going on, Lucci Sky? Oh, are you, Nate? Are you heading out? All right, three reasons companies gave for layoffs: 22% restructuring, 18% declining revenue, and 50% market shifts and trends. That restructuring, at least in my world, tends to tie to declining revenue and uncertainty, right? Um, I've seen that a bit. And that's actually been, and at least where I work, it's been in the form of consolidation of roles, leveraging technology to become more efficient at the workplace, things like AI. All right, there is. All right. Generative AI. Speaking of AI, here we go. Game development is supposed to be an art and expression of one's imagination, not an AI generated concept with no real thought process. It's interesting the impact of AI in game development. That's probably a whole different topic of conversation here. But I'll read this first paragraph. Over the past year, generative AI has shifted from a concept to a common tool. I can tell you, my company, at least, we are pushing AI a lot. And it can be as simple as leveraging AI for things like creating PowerPoint presentations, slide decks, emails, uh, Teams communication, things like that. And that's not the only place, but there's other areas where we're looking to leverage AI. Um, um, and some of it we're using to with our at least um, our services business. We're looking to leverage AI um, to leverage AI to with our clients. So over the past year, generative AI shifted from a concept to a common tool. Investors are pumping billions of dollars into AI companies. Studios are busy developing their own proprietary tools and AI generated content as a robust portal in search engines, social media platforms, and advertisements. So I'm not surprised to see the investment in AI. The game industry is not immune to this change. According to our survey, a majority, 52% of developers work at companies where create generative AI tools are being used. One third developers say they use them personally, up from 31% last year. So it's up a third. But it appears that the usage has gone up. Curiosity has gone down. So 9% of developers say their companies are interested in generative AI tools, down from 15% last year. In comparison, 27% say their companies have no interest in using them, a 9-point increase from 2024. So I think, it could be a scenario where um, um, companies looked at it and say, oh well, maybe that's not really applicable or something useful for what we do. What's interesting here, and I think I talked about how we've used it at my job, business and finance is where generative AI is used the most. Production and team leadership, community marketing, and PR. That doesn't surprise me from an operational perspective that you see that you see AI being leveraged that way. Again, I'm seeing it at my job right now where I work for my company, where leadership, community, marketing, PR, business, finance, those internal operational arms are leveraging AI. And we're even using the AI again with some of our engagements that we have with our clients. So I have a partnership with Microsoft as well for AI. But now, interesting. There are some concerns here, and it's interesting. Like I think I have some concerns about AI. I mean, I've seen some stuff. I've seen some like videos on like Facebook of um I've seen some videos on Facebook, like clearly, like and probably more in the political sphere things where, there's like fake Joe Biden videos, fake Trump videos, and they look pretty real. I mean, and that's a bit concerning, right? When you see things like that. So, according to the GDC survey, 13% of developers believe generative AI is having a positive impact on the game industry, down from 21%. Meanwhile, 30% respondents said it's had a negative impact. 12 points. That's a 12-point increase from 2024. Last year, developers were more favorable than opposed to generative AI. This is no longer the case. It appears that developer opinions on the technology are hardening too. The number who said generative AI is having a mixed impact decreased from 57% in 2024 to 51%. All right, let's move on here. Engines and platforms. Passion for PC development explodes. Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. In light of Microsoft's announcement, where they're clearly, look, I know there's been a lot of back and forth. Oh, it's an Xbox handheld. This is the ROG Ally Xbox or Xbox ROG Ally X. It's a PC handheld. It's not an Xbox. Yes, it's a branded Xbox device, but it's not an Xbox the way consumers think of an Xbox. It is a PC. Um, it's a PC. It's a handheld PC for PC gamers who want portability, access to their ecosystems, whether it's on Windows or Steam. But anyhow, that's another conversation. All right. So every year we ask developers to share what platforms they've been making games for and which ones they plan on supporting in the future. PC has consistently been the platform of choice, but this year, Salt's dominance increased even more. 80% of developers said they are currently making games for PC, up from 66%. Jeez. And three-fourths said the platform is of no interest to them, up from 62%. So that's interesting. 80% saying, hey, currently making games for PC, and three-fourths said the platform is of no interest to them. The exact reason for this jump is unclear, but it could be connected to the rising popularity of Valve Steam Deck. And that's interesting because again, it begs the question. I think that Microsoft's play, and I don't want to get into this too much just yet, but I think part of the pivot here with Xbox's strategy, Microsoft's strategy, to use the Xbox brand, which is, look, I mean, is a known commodity brand in gaming, to use that as that brand as a pivot point um, to maybe prevent the Steam OS or Valve having some kind of dominance in the PC OS space or mobile space. And that could, and I think that's part of it. The other part is to get more eyes and get people um, engaged in the ecosystem that are already there beyond home, right? To keep them in there, engaged in those ecosystems where they could spend more money and interact, things like that, blah, blah, blah. But um, interesting though. So they say they say, but it could be connected to the rising popularity of Valve's Steam Deck. This year's survey didn't single out Steam or Valve's handheld gaming computer as its own platform because it's a hub for PC and Mac games. I would say this same holds true for the ROG Ally Xbox. Although people say, well, access to Xbox, it's more access to Xbox PC stuff. But anyhow, but it appears some developers do view it as a unique platform. For example, when asked to name other platforms that interest them, almost 44% wrote in Steam Deck. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to what I was just talking about as the and so, oh, wow. So I didn't want to get to this right away. So Siri 21 says no one is using the Windows Store. I don't. I'm not going to say no one's using the Windows Store, but like at least on the PC platform, on PC, um, like they, I mean, Windows isn't the popular the popular storefront, right? On PC, it's going to be Steam, right? And so just reading this, developers 44% name other platforms, almost half wrote in Steam Deck. It's interesting. It's interesting in the sense that you see, and you got to imagine that Microsoft's thinking, well, wait a minute, developers are looking at PC as a place where they're currently making games, and then 44% of those, and I'm not sure if Microsoft's looking at the 44%, but they may be looking at, well, hey, we know that developers are looking at the Steam Deck as this unique platform where they want to put their games. What does that mean for us, right? Or do we want to get caught on the outside looking in? We have this thing Windows, we dominate the OS space with the desktop. Do we want to miss out that opportunity on the mobile OS space as relates to like mobile handheld PC gaming devices? We want to miss out or give up a lot of ground to maybe Steam OS, Valve. So now you see the chart here. So which platforms are being used for your current project? 80% of the respondents said PC. 38% said PlayStation 5 or PS or PlayStation 5 Pro. 34% said Xbox Series X and S, and 29% said Android, 28% said iOS, 23% said Mac, 20% said Nintendo Switch, 16% said web browser, 14% mentioned VR, AR, 13% said Xbox Game Pass, 12% said Linux, 9% said PlayStation Plus, 8% said Nintendo Switch, 4% tabletop games, and immediate platforms, Netflix, TikTok, etc. 3%, UGC platforms, Roblox, Minecraft, 3%, Playdate, 1%. So you see mobile though, Android, iOS right there, 29 and 28%. I can't say I'm surprised by that given Um, you know, what we saw out of the recent ESA survey, where showed a lot of people gaming, that mobile is a popular platform of choice for gamers. But understand though, I've seen some people. I see people often try to make the argument that okay, well, you're about to do what, T Rock? I'm about to roadie. Oh, you're about to play Gears of War on PlayStation. Oh boy, T Rock. By the way, how's Cuts doing? I haven't talked to Cuts in forever. I gotta, you know what? I'm gonna message Cuts right now. I'm gonna message Erica. Ask her why she didn't send BRAP an invite. Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a second here. All right. Sorry about that. The Great Be Rich. What's going on? All right. Where was I? I forgot what I was saying. So anyhow, so that's those are the platforms that. Oh, I was saying with mobile. I mean, I think people tend to, use mobile as like what the ESA said as a way to validate the strategy, the business strategies of certain companies, and they tend to forget that mobile gamers different type of gamer, different type of consumer. Mobile gaming requires follows different design monetization paths than console PC gaming. Different consumer, right? So um, different type of player engagement. So not necessarily apples to apples per se, but all right. Let's see here. Let's move down to next project by platform. So PlayStation continues. No surprise here. According to GDC, PlayStation continues its console lead over Xbox. About 38% of developers are currently making games for PS5. Drop my phone. Let me read that again. PlayStation continues its console lead over Xbox. About 38% of developers are currently making games for PS5 hardware, compared to 34% for Xbox at Series X and S. And 37% are turning to PlayStation for their next projects, compared to 33% for Xbox. However, Xbox is outperforming PlayStation in one area: cloud services. About 13% of developers are currently making games for Xbox Game Pass, compared to 9% for PlayStation Plus Extra Premium. That actually doesn't surprise me, given the how much I would argue that Game Pass, the subscription service Game Pass, is probably more of a it's a bigger cog I think, in the wheel for Xbox than it is PlayStation, right? So I think it would make sense. And I think we're seeing. I would argue we're seeing more investments to get new releases on Game Pass, like Clair Obscura Expedition 33 as an example, than you see Sony doing. Yeah. Yes, sir. Very interesting stats, right? Yeah, it's interesting. They don't break it down by third parties, right? That 4% you mentioned. All right. Mobile game development has increased for the first time since 2020, with 29% of developers currently making games for Android, 28% for iOS, up 27% and 23% respectively. Interesting here. Much of that is in Brazil and the East and South Central West Asia regions. I'm not surprised by the Asian region. Can we talk Asian regions? Where over half developers say they work on mobile games. That actually doesn't surprise me. All right, which VR platform most interests you as a developer? Can we just say VR's? I don't know. Didn't take off really. I remember Matt Piscatella saying VR was like burning money in a basically burning your money in the fireplace. So I don't know. I enjoyed the promise of VR. I like some of the VR experiences I had. Vader Immortals, one of my favorite. All right, 30% of all game developers work in VR AR development. The number of developers working in virtual and augmented reality has stayed consistent, as have the platforms of choice. According to our survey, MetaQuest Horizons store remains a dominant space for VR AR developers, with 59% currently making games for the platform. This is followed by Steam VR, 31%, PlayStation VR2 at 16%. Although only 8% of VR AR developers are currently making games for Apple Vision OS, the platform looks to be growing its foothold. Was one fifth, 18% respondents say their next games will be on that platform. One fourth are interested in Apple's VR headset. All right. What game engine are you primarily using for your current games? We always talk about Unreal Engine, right? But look at this. Unity, 32%. Unreal, 32%. Proprietary in-house, 13%. Not involved in game development, 10%. And you see CryEngine. CryEngine's still around, huh? I haven't heard CryEngine in a while. That's CryEngine is Crytek. CryEngine was a beast of an engine back in the days. All right. Let's move down here. We'll move down here. So we've talked about live service games on this show quite a bit. We know that the industry's been a lot of developers have been trying to chase that trend. We all know about PlayStation's attempts to gain inroads in live service games. They've had some challenges, to say the least. They did strike lightning with Helldivers 2, but we all remember the one game that was a live service game that just didn't do well. And then Marathon, I don't know how I feel about Marathon. I think Marathon's going to have its own challenges. I think releasing in a crowded space of extraction shooters. So, um, but developers are divided on live service games. And the report says live service games have become part of the industry's ecosystem, with games like Fortnite, Warframe, and Genshin Impact continuing to successfully engage players with new content experiences. I've actually talked quite a bit about consumers and their ecosystems. Like it's difficult to really pull what I like to call behavioral inertia. Like like this, it's hard to pull people out of ecosystems, out of their habits, consumer habits. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And so you have these sinkholes, these Fortnites, Warframes, Genshin Impacts, Call of Duties. Um, it's just not. It's not easy to do. Not easy to do. Oh, he did Hero Down Under. Hero Down Under says, "I like that Herman directly addresses Concord's failure." What did he say about that? I didn't watch the briefing, so I just curious to see what he said about Concord. Yeah, he said they learn from the way the game was launched without a differentiation from other games, and that's the challenge, right? The differentiation, but not just the differentiation, but I think it is something that's going to hook, like this hook that's going to get people coming back. Like how do you do that? And it's challenging. It's just especially when you have these existing ecosystems already that have that were early that launched years ago. And I remember when Warframe launched years ago, and then Genshin Impact. I mean, it's just it's not an easy thing to do. So so the business of games part of the survey, or the report here says, um but for every Valorant, there's been a Concord, which here down under mentioned that Herman Hulse addressed, an Anthem, which we know failed, a Redfall, which failed. Like I said, Concord failed. Live service games can be lucrative and sustaining business models, but it's one that's seen a lot of failures or missed opportunities, and that's true. I mean, we saw Sony. Sony was kind of doubling down on on these live service games. And so it's going to be interesting. I forget the game that Jade Redman was working. Is it Heist? I forget the name of the game that they're working on. Not Heist. So okay, so here Donner says Herman Hall said they have implemented rigorous testing and consultation with gamers. So I think so. this is good here down there. Like it's good that they have it's good that they've recognized the issues, right? That they're implementing rigorous testing. They've learned from this. I mean, granted, these things probably should have been in place before, right? And maybe they were to what maybe we don't know the extent which they were, but anyhow, they've said, okay, look, there's a problem here, right? Um, and so now they're implementing more consultation with gamers, rigorous testing. Um, oh wow, he said internal tests, and he directly used a phrase indicating no more preaching to people. Wow, seems like they have faith in fair games and marathon. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, fair games. That's what it was. Thank you, fair games. Thank you, Chrono Rig. Yeah, I don't know why I said heist. It's telling that you couldn't remember fair games. Yeah, I mean, look, well, Corey Massey. I mean, I don't know. It's not out yet, so you know. Hey, what's up, Capono? Hope you and yours are doing well too. All right, where was I? All right. We asked our survey respondents whether they would be interested in developing a live service game as their next title. About 13% said they would, while 42% said they were not interested, and 29% said they didn't know or it wasn't applicable to them. Around 16% of developers said they already work on live service games, and that number increases to 33% for AAA developers. Not surprised that increase with AAA developers, giving the large amount of teams, money, resources that live services games take to create and maintain. By the way, for those who don't know, I'm a big professional wrestling fan. I'm watching NXT in the background while I do the show. So I tell you, I got to do a wrestling show. I've been wanting to talk about the WWE, them buying AAA wrestling, how stacked their roster is, and then companies like AEW and TNA and things like that. So I may do a BRAP. For those who are interested in professional wrestling, watch professional wrestling. Um, let me know. I'd love to have you guys on as guests, talk about sports entertainment or professional wrestling. All right. Developer opinions on the value of live service games were mixed. Many respondents say they saw the value in live service, not only the financial side, but also the play experience and community building. Others noted their concerns about declining player interest, creative stagnation, predatory practices, microtransactions, and the risk of developer burnout. One of the biggest issues mentioned was market oversaturation, with many developers noting how tough it is to break through and build a sustainable player base. That's what I was saying earlier. It is hard with these games like the Fortnites, the Warframes, the Genshin Impacts, the Valorants. I mean, that's what I think is going to be the uphill battle with Marathon. Like how I mean, the extraction shooters, Escape from Tarkov. There's some other ones out there. How do are you going to be able to carve a nice piece of pie, a slice of the pie out that where you can carve out and get enough players that are engaged and maintain those players in Marathon? I mean, I think in part Bungie's hoping, hey, just off the Bungie name alone, that that I think that they're probably looking at, hey, we're Bungie, and just off our name alone, people are going to, jump on this game. I wouldn't, and I don't think Sony is. I mean, we don't know what Sony's expectations are for you know um, for Marathon are, but um, but I wouldn't say, and I think most people in the chat, let me know what you guys think of the chat. But I think most people would agree that this game probably won't be as big as Destiny, won't have the same impact as Destiny. And I just think that, it's just, these extraction shooters, I mean, they are, it's not an it's not an easy space, right, to come in and just try to carve out some of the market and try to gain some mind share. So it's going to be interesting, but I do think having the Bungie name probably helps. But we'll see if that's how sustainable that is um, for Marathon. Corey Bass says Bungie needs Marathon to hit or PlayStation to take over their company. Corey, I think that's happening right now. Um, and that's interesting, Nate. That may be part of the challenge with developing live service games. Like, what may be okay when you start development of that game, 5, 6 years ago, that may work then, but it may not work, at the time when that game releases finally, right? That's false. Just because Fortnite didn't start as the PvP phenomenon, today doesn't mean anyone didn't care about it. I played every massive Discord who played for years. What do you refer to, Nate? Fortnite had an evolution, right? Wasn't what it was or what it is now when it first came out. It evolved into what it is today, and when it did that, it hit. But I mean, how many other games do that? Are able to evolve that way and then capitalize on pop culture. All right. So developers, go back to this. Others noted their concerns about declining play interest, creative stagnation, and predatory practice, microtransactions, the risk of developer burnout. And one of the biggest issues mentioned was market. I've already read this. Okay. Here we go. Top measures of live service success. 62% says stable concurrent user CCU base. 40% of daily 40% is 40% of daily active users, and then 30% percentage of monetized players. And there's some of the quotes about live service. All right, Hollywood is adapting more video games. Video game adaptations aren't going away anytime soon, especially ones based on AAA releases. According to our survey, 13% of developers have worked on games that are being or have been adapted into movies, shows, or other media. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, I think Sony has, even Microsoft, You know, you look at yeah, I don't disagree, Corey. You know, and but I do think those wheels are in motion. But yeah, I don't disagree. So yeah, I mean, we are seeing video game adaptations. That Hollywood is adapting more video games. We see that in shows like The Last of Us, Fallout. Fallout was great, by the way. If you haven't watched Fallout, it's a really good show. I loved it. I can't wait for season two. You know, Twisted Metal was actually I was a pleasant surprise for me as a television show. I wasn't really expecting much. You know, we know that Sony's going to leverage, you know, that leverage some of their more popular IPs to um, make movie TV adaptations of those games, right? Just a way, and what we've seen from this is that there has been there's this correlation, right, between increased sales at the time of the show's release, right? So we saw bumps with Fallout, we've seen that with The Last of Us, you know, um, you know, and I'll say this, you know, like with The Last of Us season two, and I've played The Last of Us Part Two. I know Game Logic's playing it right now on PC, um, but like for me with The Last of Us Part Two, like I really didn't have oh gosh, more rain. By the way, it's raining where I live. Sucks. I'm tired of rain. Just opened up my pool and haven't been able to use it really because of rain. So, but like The Last of Us Part Two, like you know, and I'm not saying this is happening um with everyone who watches that show, but like you know, I beat The Last of Us Part Two, and I've played The Last of Us Part One like three times. I had zero interest going back to Last of Us Part Two to play it again, even though I played The Last of Us Part One three times, and because of the show, because how good I thought um because of how much I enjoyed the show, because how much I enjoyed the show, like I'm actually like, oh, you know what? Like I like watching the show, season two just really it brought me back to my experiences in playing The Last of Us Part Two and some of the emotion that I felt playing that game and the characters and you know and I thought to myself like I want to go back now because I know and I remember like I was like I've forgotten certain things that happened in The Last of Us 2 video game and I said to myself, well shit, like I want to go back now because they kind of left me on a they left me on a cliffhanger with The Last of Us, the ending of The Last of Us season 2, right? And I said to myself, I said, I may want to go back and play this game now because I want to go back to that where the show left off in the game. So, I mean, that's a potential impact of these shows, right? Sam says, "I'm playing The Last of Us Part 2 as you speak. Got to get the platinum." Now, Sam, were you playing this before the show, season 2, or does season 2 kind of like motivate you to go out and play it again? All right. So according to the report here, the number jumps from 36% for AAA developers, which is a 10-point increase from last year. But as the number of adaptations has gone up, interest in trying to become the next multimedia hit could be going down. This year's survey has fewer developers who say they've talked internally about getting their games adapted, going from 20% in 2024 to 14% today. There's also been an increase in the number of developers or question who don't know or the question isn't applicable to them. All right, we're gonna go with top 5 business models. So, top 5 business models. All right, we asked developers to share the business models they're using for their current projects, as well as the discovery methods that are most effective in getting the word out. Over half, 57% respondents said they're currently working on premium games. This is followed by free to download DLC updates and paid in game items. The least used were premium tier subscriptions and paid subscriptions. Word of mouth, 86% is the most used marketing tool overall for game developers, with social media, 84% tracking close behind. These were followed by real time communications like Discord or Slack, and live streamers and events, 69% for those each. The least popular marketing method this year was in game crossovers and promotions. Only 28% of developers said they've made use of this method. So look at that, premium games, digital or physical. All right, publishing and financing. 2020, based on the 2025 state of the game industry. Here's a quote here: "The lack of opportunities in the game industry spills into funding opportunities. Unless you have something that will be live service or the potential to be viral, it's not easy to find a publisher." So it's interesting. You have the developers like not interested in live service, and then you have the publishers who seem to be interested in only funding live service or something that would go viral. All right, I'm going to move on. It's interesting with all the talk about DEI and video games. There's an interesting graph here. How successful do you think your company has been at the following: diversity, equity, inclusion? 28% said somewhat successful. 28% said very successful. 23% said don't know. 15% said slightly successful. 6% said not at all successful. So companies are seeing some success with their game accessibility, TI, sustainability measures. According to our survey, 71% of developers think their company's DI and accessibility efforts have been at least slightly successful, while 51% feel the same way about their company's sustainability efforts. This was the first year we added don't know or not available as an option to this question, so we could account for solo developers, small teams, and others who may not have those programs. Interestingly, one-third developers chose this option for sustainability, but less than one-fourth said the same for DEI or accessibility. Based on the data, it appears that fewer companies are implementing sustainability measures, and developers aren't as confident in programs from companies that do. Developers were also asked to share their comfort level with understanding implementing accessibility measures in their games. 80% expressed some level of comfort, with somewhat being the most widely selected answer at 37%. Oh, this is interesting here. Here we go. Developers report working more hours for the first time in years. We asked developers to share how many hours they work per week on average. While the majority of developers continue to work 40 hours or less per week, that percentage has decreased from 64% last year to 57% today. And the first time the number has gone down since we started asking this question in 2019. Longer work weeks are seeing an uptick. 13% of developers say they are working 51 plus hours per week on average, compared to 8% last year. The number of that could be a result of layoffs too. I'm wondering. I'm wondering if that's a result of layoffs, where less staff and now you're doing more with less, which would require more work hours to accomplish that work. The number of developers who have worked a maximum of 41 plus hours in a single week stayed relatively the same, going from 77% last year to 79% now. Half, 51% of developers said they worked over 50 hours in one week, up from 46%, and 20% worked over 60 hours, up from 24%. When asked why they worked over 40 hours in a single week, 2/3, 67%, attributed to self pressure, down from 71% last year. But the biggest change was in developers who didn't see their hours as excessive, decreasing from 36% 2024 to 23% today. Indicates that more developers are seeing their excess hours. Indicates that more developers see their excess hours as an issue. We talked a lot about unions in the last couple of years. Kazan's actually, I played Kazan, the demo. I thought it was pretty good. Union support, 69%, age 18 to 34. This is a breakdown. 34 to 52, 34 to 54, 50%, 55 plus 27%. Job roles to support unions, 89% narrative, 77% QA, 33% business and finance. I don't see developers there. I think Logic had made that argument about software developers not wanting unionization per se, and people pushed back on him for that. What's up, Warwana? Studio type, 59% indies support unions. Double A, 60%, 58% triple A. So about the same across the board. 20% developers said they've talked about unionizing at their companies in the past 12 months. Uh, 29% of the companies have been supportive, 19% mixed, and 12% opposing. When asked to share their thoughts on the game industry's ongoing unionization efforts, most responses were in support, arguing that unions could help improve working conditions, reduce crunch, and advocate for marginalized developers. Some also suggested profit sharing, residuals, and employee owned studios. Those were opposed that unions could harm indie studios, stifle creativity, and force companies to either close or move their jobs overseas. All right. So that is the GDC 2025 Game Industry Report. They put out this report every year. You can go to GDC and actually download a copy of this report. So if you're interested, go to GDC. You can download this copy. But yeah, I thought this was very interesting. I thought it was a very interesting report on the state of the gaming industry. All right, I see a lot of I see some conversation about Expedition 33. All right, so where do we stand with Expedition 33? Is this everyone's game of the year? Mind's Eye, really, Chrono Rig? All right. Game of your life here down under. Wow. I can't say I totally disagree with that. All right, let's go to PlayStation. All right, Z Huge. We've had Z Huge on the show before. It's been quite some time though. Big shout out to Z Huge, Daniel Ahmad. And Sony had their business segment presentation and fireside chat for this year. Their game and network services segment. And you'll see that the PlayStation 5 has generated $13 billion in profits. Now, this is compared to 10 billion cumulative. I can't even talk today. The 10 billion cumulative profit generated during the PS1 to PS4 generation. So it's interesting. We often hear that the console market's dying, and then you see what the PlayStation 5. And that's not to say that the console market isn't a mature market. I'm not saying that, but the reality is that there are companies that are making money within the console space. Sony being one of them. If you look at what they've done with the PS5, to Daniel's point here, he's saying that in comparison, you see 13 billion in revenue. I mean, you see They lost -4 billion during the PlayStation 3 generation, right? So 13 billion, um, 13 billion in profits for the PS5 generation, and a total of 10 total for the PlayStation PS2, PS3 generation, PS4 generation. Make sure I got this in order here. I think. Oh, here we go. Big shout out to C Huge, by the way. He did a great job of summarizing this. This is why I pulled up his tweet here. Actually, this is I don't know. I don't think Nib's going to make it this evening, and I hope he's okay. This is why we were going to have him on for. We were going to have him on specifically for this segment. He loves talking numbers, right? All right. So moving along here. This is the first year. Z Huge says that reports is the first year where PS5 monthly active users are higher than PS4 was equal last year. It's also the reason why Black Ops 6 is on PS4. Even though we are 5 years into the PS5 lifecycle, non-PS5 devices still have 46 million monthly active users, primarily engaging with live service titles. So we talked a little bit about that. Like how are you going to get those people off the Fortnite that are on PlayStation, right? When you can play Fortnite on PS4. You don't need a PS5, right? To play Fortnite, to play some of these other games. I believe Black Ops 7 is going to be I think Black Ops 7 might be on PS4 as well. If I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and double check. So then how do you get those people to upgrade, right? And GTA, think about GTA 5, right? GTA 5 is a live service game. And so it's going to be interesting to see what kind of impact GTA 6 has on current gen console sales, because it's going to be exclusive to the current gen consoles. I do expect GTA 6 to move the needle a bit for next gen consoles, considering how big GTA is. Rwanda says PS4 is still chugging. Yep. PlayStation Plus. Oh, here we go. Z Huge says summarizes 38% of PlayStation subscribers are paying for the premium or extra tier of the service, up 30% 2 years ago. This is translated into 63% higher spend on subscription service over the first 5 years of the PS5 lifecycle versus the first 5 years of the PS4 lifecycle. I'm actually a premium subscriber. All right. PlayStation continues to focus On console and beyond strategy included console single player games plus extension to PC. And by the way, they did mention that there's still going to be, it's not going to be a situation where, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's not going to be a situation where they're going to, just put, they're taking a calculated approach to, PlayStation to PC ports, right? So, console single player games extension to PC, live service games day and date on console and PC. So this again, their PlayStation is what they're focusing on a console, and they're beyond strategy, right? Live service games day and date on console and PC. Expansion of IP to TV, movies, anime, etc. We talked about that in the survey. Okay, so expansion of IP to TV, movies, anime, etc. Multi-device, portable accessories, PC, global expansion. They also put capitalize the momentum to drive profitable growth and evolve the PlayStation experience portfolio of leading and recurrent single player and live service game franchises, expand franchises, reach to PC, TV, movies. We talked about that. Location based entertainment, continued financial discipline to drive operating leverage while investing in IP operations, publishing, and technology. So they see they have Helldivers 2 and Marathon under live service, right? Single player Ghost of Yoti. Okay, so I'm highlighting the live service because I thought that was interesting there. There was another piece that Sony had here. Let me share this right here. This is actually the slide deck that they presented here. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see if those, what percentage of those PS4 movers use. I know they've, it was mentioned that, hey, look, there are people there that are tied to live service games. So, if it's a Fortnite, unless Fortnite moves over to, PS5 only, then there's probably no incentive for those people to move over. I do think there'll be some migration from PS4 to PS5 for those that are tied into that are a part of the Grand Theft Auto 5 that are in that Grand Theft Auto 5 live service game, or the live service portion of that game. As when GTA 6 comes out, it's going to be exclusive to these next gen consoles or these current gen consoles. So you got to imagine that there are going to be people who migrate to the PlayStation 5 because they want to continue playing Grand Theft Auto 6. Although it's going to be interesting though, if if Rockstar sunsets GTA 5, considering the amount of people that are playing on last gen consoles. Yeah, and then no traditional. I mean, that's a fair point, Nate. Like, I mean, there's been no price drop. Would there have been more migration with a price drop? Possibly. Yeah, that's a great question, Carter. What curious what country makes up for those PS4? It's a great question. I don't know. You see the PlayStation business here. Console peripherals, content, and services. Again, they talked about the PlayStation console being the gateway, right? Being the conduit to a lifetime of player engagement and value. And so, when I've talked about PlayStation on this show, we've talked about the panels talked about it. One of the things that I've said too, and I think the panels have said this as well, that PlayStation seems to have a very Apple-esque type approach to their ecosystem. I remember people asking, well, who's the PlayStation Portal for? Well, I mean, the PlayStation Portal was never the primary hardware piece. It's a peripheral, right? It's an additive device for those who want to play PlayStation games without sitting in front of their TV, like on the while sitting on their couch, laying in bed. It's an extension of the PlayStation hardware at a fairly affordable price for that type of experience, right? It's not meant to be a replacement or substitute. It's an additive experience. But again, I mean, I think this just speaks to PlayStation and how they look at the console as the gateway, as the conduit to content services and peripheral devices. And that to me, it just seems very Apple-esque in that regard. I talked about Z Huge talked about these slides here. That's why I'm going past them right now. PlayStation Store, recurring diverse content, stable base of revenue from major franchise titles with a large share of ongoing content. You'll see like EA Sports, Roblox here, Call of Duty, NBA 2K, Ubisoft Plus Classics, Grand Theft Auto 5. We just talked about that. Wonder what the impact of Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to have on current gen console sales. I think it's going to have an impact. I think it's going to move. It would imagine it's going to move the needle. You see peripherals enhancing the PlayStation experience. Again, I go back. I mean, the console is at the center of the experience, and these things are just enhancements. Yeah, I wish Falky could have joined today. Nib would have loved to pick their brains about supply. Really, Falky, the supply chain. We talked about quite a bit the supply chain. I feel like the last year or so with Falky, but they talked about supply chain distribution, um, player and creator services. You see 124 monthly active users, 846 player LTD spend. LTD spend represents cumulative spend on content, services, and peripherals attributed per active device over the first 5 years of the PS5 console lifecycle. And they talk about the studio business here, which we covered. Look at the different the different global teams, which they say with differentiating and complementary capabilities. You see single player Insomniac, Housemarque, Team Asobi, Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, Santa Monica, Fire Sprite, Live Service, San Diego Studio, Haven, Team LFG, Bungie, and then Evolving Multi Genre, Dark Outlaw, Bluepoint, Gorilla, Ben Studio, Polyphony Digital, co-development support, Nixus, Valkyrie Entertainment, XDev Publishing, Arrowhead, Kojima Productions, ongoing partnerships with additional studios. So this is interesting. They showed there's some speculation here. It'd be interesting to see what the chat thinks, but well, it's interesting, Nate. I want to bring this point, and Nate brings up. Yeah, they reiterated several times during the fireside chat that importance of the PlayStation being the experience gamers want, not to depend on the cloud to facilitate their gaming. I think that's important because we talk about cloud, right? And I think people are always, oh, it's the future. The cloud's the future, and maybe one day it is, right? Maybe when we get those, when cloud can it offer a one-to-one experience to console gaming, right? Where you don't have to worry about internet connection, whether or not a game's optimize well for cloud, things like that, right? Like, and so it's interesting because that's the thing. I think I talked about this on Crossfire. I'm trying to think about. Sorry, give me a second here. So to Nate's point, I think it's we could speculate about the price of consoles moving forward. But I really do think that like what you were saying here, Nate. The importance of PlayStation bring the experience gamers want, and I think for console gamers, they're looking for that ease of use, that cost effective, piece of hardware that a game is going to be optimized for, right? And so now you're not reliant on cloud to deliver that, and the challenges that presents itself, right, to the end user and their experience, and to developers. And with consoles, I mean, oh, we got a Nate here in the live chat. What's going on, Nate? I just saw that you were here.
Am I better now?
Yeah, you're better. Actually,
okay.
Yeah, you're much better. I think this is a great point here, Nate, because I think a lot of people miss. I think well, not a lot, but I think certain segments of the gaming population focus so much on the future, right?
They do.
And they try to make it like, oh, well, platform unification, cloud, that's the future. And maybe it is. Maybe when my kids are my age, that's how we game, right? But I don't think the technology is necessarily there yet. And one thing I'll say about console gaming and the consumer that prefers console gaming, it's really that ease of use, right?
Absolutely.
They're not going to want to tinker with PC. They're not going to want something that's overly complicated. I think when we talk about messaging, and I think this has kind of been the challenge with Xbox a bit since the Xbox One. And while I certainly did like some of the feature sets that Xbox One had, you got to remember that a lot of the pushback and the way the market reacted to that particular console was, we just want a gaming device. Yes, these things have other, yes, the consoles do other things, but I think, I was talking to Logic about this. I think he said product classification. I could be wrong. Maybe he didn't say that, but But I think that's important for consumers to know what it is or what something's classified and what it is classified as or what it does. I think that's what he was saying, dude. I don't disagree with him because I think that was kind of part of the issue with the Xbox One. But I do think that there are consumers out there to what Sony's saying. We're not going to be dependent on the cloud. We want to bring through PlayStation. We can give the experience gamers want, and that is optimized performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ensuring optimized performance without the need for tweaking settings, right?
Yep.
Comfort, accessibility. Some of us like to sit on the couch in front of a large TV. Like that's a thing.
And that's what that's what the CEO was saying, right?
Yeah.
They're answering questions from investors, right? And you can tell because the type of questions they're getting asked are, again, like you said, future orientated. So they're always worried about the latest thing. How are you going to react to that, right? And that was a big thing that came up was cloud. Cloud actually came up twice in a row, and he had to reiterate to them like the issue they don't understand is that they're hearing cloud a lot because that's the big buzzword, right? Even your company, like you said, works with Azure, which is cloud-based, M365, again, that is cloud-based. Like a ton of stuff is cloud-based, and it works real well for some things. But gaming, it really only works well as an option. And that's what he reiterated to them. Like, we see that our gamers love the option, but they do not want that to be the main way to facilitate their gaming because they do not want to depend on an unstable infrastructure, which is true. The majority of people, and I've had to talk to this about a lot of people, especially the United States. The people in the United States usually never know anything about infrastructure, right? Unless you're in tech or IT, right? Like, you have to go into, okay, how many people have good internet, right? Now, how many of those people have access to at least feasible internet? Then you have to go, how many people have access to like a gigabit network as opposed to like 300 Mbps? And I mean, I know people up to now that still have like under 3 Mbps, 3 megabits per second. So like that type of stuff is not going to work for them, right? So he was reiterating to them, while cloud is a great option for people who have the available areas to utilize that, it works really well as an option. And that's where he stated, again, the PlayStation Portal, as a tool that people are utilizing to play more in different places. So they're using the premium cloud subscription in order to play their Portal on the go without the need for their PlayStation to be on, and things like that. And he's saying like, hey, like we are expanding. We have plenty of cloud offerings, but the infrastructure in place around the world is not ready for a device that is completely cloud-based. And he said, and gamers do not, have basically, he told them, have told us they don't want a device that depends on, the, that depends on online capabilities or connectivity in order for them to game. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want that either. And I have the gigabit connection. And it's like, it's been plenty of times where I've been gaming and it's gone down or, slowed down or a number of other things that would typically frustrate me. But like, because I'm playing a single player game, I don't have to worry about my experience deteriorating because I'm playing locally, right? And that's basically what he reiterated to them, because again, like you stated, a lot of them are overly future orientated because words like cloud and, AI and stuff are really big right now. So that's like the main buzzwords that they were kind of honing in on from an investment standpoint. Basically, how would you react to that if cloud gaming took off tomorrow? And like he even told them like, hey, we've been in cloud gaming since PS3. Like, and we've done nothing but improve it since then.
I mean, they purchased Gaikai. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, a lot of people don't. It's funny. Like, and I do give Microsoft a lot of credit because they did kind of they weren't the originators of online gaming on consoles, but they improved upon it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and a lot of people don't realize that yeah, Sony has been in the cloud. I mean, the Gaikai was that, right? That streaming
Yeah,
service, right?
and it's been
Um,
pretty solid since its original implementation. It's just like you said, a lot of people don't even know that that whole initiative has been going on since the PS3.
yeah,
That's
no,
it's just a
they
wild thing.
don't. But again, there is a consumer that has that requirement, ease to use. They want their, and I often, as a PC gamer, and I've been kind of been going back and forth. And now that I'm still on the 30 series card, now I'm really
Yeah.
facing this dilemma. Do I want to go 50 series? Like, do I want to spend that
Hmm.
money? Um, with PC presents its own issues where it's like, okay, now I'm tinkering more now with settings, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, shit. Well, I kind of like I might just go get a PS5 Pro innate for Death Stranding 2, and
Yeah.
then I don't have to worry about tinkering.
I
Like
mean, you don't.
there's yeah, and I know, especially with first party, because even Sony's first parties had some issues on PC, but I
Hmm.
know that the expectation, or at least what we've come accustomed to, is that these games on consoles are going to be optimized or designed specifically for that hardware.
Exactly.
Um, and so I think there's something to be said for that, and I think until the market says otherwise, I don't see that changing, and maybe it will in the future, like with my kids.
I
But
I just, I just don't think the until that gets dialed in, I think there's always going to be a plug and play user because no, there's never going to be a time when everybody's dialed in, right? Like I had this discussion with Priscilla the other day, right? She was like, everybody at work has an iPhone and an Apple Watch. None of them use any of those devices to their full potential. They text on it, they call on it, and that's about it. Like it's more of an accessory because they're just not tech people like that. And the majority of people are just not. They want to come home, they want to press a button, and they want to jump in hassle free. And I'm telling you, even as someone, and I've told people, and this is why I'm always very careful and why I have a lot of people usually come to me when they think about PC gaming, because I'll tell you straight, like I'm very good at it. My PC experience is pretty much flawless, right? And but that I work in IT and I've built these things for going on 20 years now. So and even then I'm still at the mercy of Nvidia messing up an update, right? Like we just went through it where Logic had a 4070 card randomly go black on him for a bad driver update. Nvidia messed up like the last 3 or 4 drivers, and like it was causing a ton of issues across the board. Now imagine someone completely non-tech oriented trying to deal with that, trying to figure out what's going on, where do I troubleshoot, how do I roll back drivers, how do I even begin to think about that? Everybody doesn't have 3 and 4 PCs lying around to mess around and figure things out, right? Nor do they want to, right? You want to jump in. And this was a conversation I had recently during a spoiler cast that I was on with Hero Down Under and Thrifty. And we got into, he was like, man, I was really thinking about getting a Steam Deck or something, you know. And when we explained to him what it takes to run games on the Steam Deck and how much tinkering and settings management you have to do, he immediately was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't want to go anywhere near that. But like he just didn't know because he loves, like we talked about, ease of use, pressing the button, jumping in, and just playing the game. And we're like, yeah, you're not going to do that on there. Even on games that are Steam Deck verified, you're still going to have to manage those settings. And a lot of people are just they're not ready for that or even want to do that. And I 100% agree with that. That is why to this day, one of the main things people always ask me, you have this really powerful PC and you gamed on PC for pretty much as long as you've gamed on console. So like, what keeps you gaming on both? And I'm just like, I mean, there's so many reasons for that, but I was like that, PlayStation offering, and this is what I told people, the same thing with Nintendo, when you offer compelling exclusives designed from the ground up that I can't get anywhere else. I mean, that's just where I'm going to be, man. I'm not going to miss out on games. I'm not waiting around to an undisclosed time for something to maybe come later, right? Which again is something they reiterated during the fireside chat. Herman Hull specifically, which I put in chat earlier, um, was like, we're being very careful about what and if we put, certain games on other platforms. So he's like, there's no guarantee or anything that something is even going to come. So it's like, why sit there and wait on that when, like you said, you can run out, grab a PS5 Pro. And I don't even know if you saw that, but Logic got a PS5 Pro because they were on sale here recently.
Yeah,
And
and I missed out.
he
I
went back.
missed out on this. I missed out on the sale. Like I was going to go take advantage of it, and then I just got busy. And I talked to
Yeah.
Logic today. He's like, "Oh, I got a PS5 Pro," and I'm like, "You did?" He's like, "Yeah, I told
Yeah.
you last week." I don't remember him telling me. Maybe he did tell me,
Oh,
but yeah, he's got a
I teased him. I teased him for like a week straight, bro. Like because I kept nagging at him when he went PC only about playing was Unicorn Overlords because he was loving it. He was on this big JRPG kick, and then he also picked up the same day his Switch 2. And guess what he's playing? Bravely Default. Again, exclusives. Things you can't get anywhere else. And then once you're in that ecosystem, who a big fan of the show here, one of your previous co-hosts, um, slow mo back slap. He will even tell you, as someone like me who has played on both, once he's in that ecosystem, right? He's on his PlayStation. He plays a lot like me, where like if something isn't specifically designed where it's going to be inherently better on PC, or there's not going to be a significant difference. A lot of times he'll pick it up on PlayStation. So it's like, but you've got to get me in that spot in the first place, right? If you're just offering all your games day one on PC, like I'm no longer I'm going to take that investment that I would put on PS6 and I'm just going to put it in my PC, knowing that I'll have access to pretty much everything. But yeah, like you said, there's not enough people who are just simply ease of use. They need people like me and you and Slow-Mo who are on both, right, to still give us a compelling reason to get that platform, right? Because when I reiterated this to someone, I was like, I'm not the kind of customer PlayStation wants to lose. I've had every PlayStation from launch and every iteration thereafter, the slim version, whatever, since the PlayStation 1, right? We bought two PS5s day one. I think I have 12 controllers at this point, including the PlayStation Edge. We have two PlayStation Portals. I gave one of our PlayStation 5s to our niece, so now they're in it because they already had one. So now my nieces and nephews have two PS5s, and then we went out and we bought two PS5 Pros. Like that is why it is important to maintain a compelling reason and understand why he reiterates the CEO, where he says it is important that our customers want a great experience delivered and designed by PlayStation, to facilitate their gaming. And this was one that I commented on earlier. You might not have seen it, but people were taking something out of context that the CEO said when they asked him about the Switch 2 and how will that affect your business model, basically. And he basically told them like, well, I think to deliver what we want to deliver, we need the hardware we've developed, the PlayStation, to deliver the experience that we want to our customers. And he's like, the Switch 2 doesn't change that, because he said on a large screen, our thing is to deliver an amazing performant, gameplay on that screen to the best ability that we can through our PS5 and PS5 Pro. And I was like, absolutely. Because I could tell you right now, we have the Switch 2. I picked it up. Priscilla bought No Man's Sky on it the other night. I was playing it, and while it is a much, much better experience than the Switch 1, you finally have full online and a bunch of stuff. I immediately could tell. She spun the controller around one time, and it struggled to load the textures for a second and, freaked out. And it's like the closest performance I've had to my PC with that game is the PS5 standard. And then, of course, now I have the PS5 Pro. But that difference is still very significant, right? Which is why, like you said, next year when games like GTA 6 finally launch, you are going to get a flood of people who have been on the fence, who may have been waiting for that traditional price drop, and they're done waiting because you can't play. Gamers are not missing out on, like you said, an industry defining event that is going to be GTA 6 and what that's going to represent. And, it's just something you can't miss, right? So, and along with, like you said, that ease of use, you come home, you set up a PlayStation, you plug it in with two things, HDMI cable that it came with and a plug, and you put it into your TV, hit play, either download GTA 6 or pop in the disc and you're good to go. Like, you
Mhm.
can't beat that experience. You can't. So yeah, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, that ease of use, man. That's a real thing. I mean, that's a and understanding what it is. Like I think people fail to understand. I think what that 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 not every consumer is like them. I think I see a lot of people
Exactly.
project their like how they view something and their needs as a consumer onto the rest of the market. It just doesn't work that way.
Hmm.
Um, but no, I thought that was a great point, Nate, and that's why I wanted to talk about it a bit, which is interesting here. So we look at like their single player, creative or so their single player games, right? The games they've released
Hmm.
the last fiscal years, FY21, FY22. We see Ghost of Yote and Death Stranding too. So it looks like I Intergalactic Wolverine 2026. Is that how you read that? Because that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's how I read that. That's definitely how I read
Yeah.
that.
So you've got two 10-pole titles, and um,
Well, and not just that, right? Because another thing that they brought up, which a lot of people forget, right, is the China Hero Project, and leading into the India Hero Project, into the Middle East, project. Like, all these projects are also bearing fruit while their first party teams are about to deliver these games. Like you said, we're just about to get Death Stranding, which is funny you said that because I just pre-ordered Death Stranding 2, the deluxe edition, like right before I came in here. So, like, these games again, and then like you said again, I know that you're someone who values having the best experience, right, possible, and the only place that you're going to get that and be able to facilitate that on a PlayStation 5 is, like you said, picking up a PS5 Pro and playing Death Stranding, you know as someone who is a fan of the original. And then, of course, Ghost of Yote later this year. You also have Lost Soul Aside, if you're interested in that. Like, and it's just going to continue on from here. So, no, but I definitely um, get where you were coming from on that. And like I said, it's funny, bringing up Logic all the time, because before he had upgraded, I remember he was joking. He was like, I'm at a point where I completely understand people having to wonder, should they upgrade their PC or should they just get a PS5 Pro? And like, he brought up that because he's like, it's a really compelling argument, especially if you have a PS5 that you could just trade in, and take care of most of the costs in the first place, and then pick up a PS5 Pro. So yeah, there's just so many reasons and so many things that they just kind of reiterated on the single player offerings and the tentpole titles, and whether or not they're bringing those to other platforms, right? Because I mean, other stuff that's on here, right? People keep saying, "Well, you don't need a PlayStation anymore," right? Obviously it's a joke, but Gran Turismo is still not on anything else. Demon Souls is still not on anything else. And for the foreseeable future, we have no idea when Ghosts, or if Ghosts and Death Stranding are even going to come later, right? We can assume, right? We've got data, we know the situations behind some of these games, but ultimately the only place for you to play them this year when they launch is on a PlayStation 5, right? Like, you were just talking about wrestling, right? How stacked WWE is. That's what you got to do, man. You got to stack the deck.
Yeah, well, I do think I'm leaning towards these games being Intergalactic 2026, Wolverine 2026. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm, just based on 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and now upcoming. To me, that would signal
Yeah,
26.
yeah. I'm thinking 26 as well as some surprises. Like I don't even think that'll be it. I think those will
Mhm.
be two of the main titles, but I think they'll still have some more surprises for us as well. Um, because PlayStation did also work with a couple other companies as well. Where the Wind Meets, if you've seen that, that's an upcoming one that's PlayStation as well. So there's definitely a number of other titles coming between the end of the year and early next year, beside those titles. And like I said, we haven't even seen Corey Barlog's game yet. And then word on the street is, well, not even word on the street. This was straight from Neil Druckmann during one of his interviews recently, where he said Naughty Dog's working on another game. Now, I mean, obviously that's probably going to be a PS6 game by the time it releases, but again, they're definitely working on a lot. So
It's interesting. They did say that Sony did say, and I'm paraphrasing it. I think believe they were asked about the Xbox ROG Ally, and I think they said that that was kind of like a, I don't know. I don't know if they said it was a cool strategy.
oh,
Um,
they asked them about what they did. The question was, what do you, as the industry, and more so, they said Microsoft moves to a third, or a multi-platform strategy is how they worded it. They said, how basically, what do you think of that strategy and how does it affect you, basically?
that's what it was. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and they were like, well, I think that because they were saying they're moving away from the console, as the primary. And he was like, well, while I think that's a good thing, like, because they asked him, do you think that's a bad thing or not? Which is again why I said you could tell these are investor questions. But he was basically like, while I think that's a good thing, basically for them, it doesn't affect our model. And I think that our gamers and our customer base has basically stated they want to continue with PlayStation being the primary facilitator of their gaming.
That's what it was. Yep. That's
Yeah,
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
yeah,
Because they were
yep,
asked that question. It was like he was like, "Yeah, I think it's great." Not. I mean, but this is our strategy, right? This is kind of what we're doing. We're going to coalesce around
exactly.
the hardware and you know do what we've been doing. So I mean that's again, I mean
I
different
mean, you've said it
strategies.
on the
Yeah.
show. You guys have said it on the show. Just because someone else has a different strategy doesn't mean we have to go copy them. We have
No, I
ours,
mean
and they have theirs.
no, and theirs has been. I mean, theirs has been successful for them. I say theirs, PlayStation, just like
Hmm.
Nintendo. I mean, it's so funny. Like we never talk about Nintendo the way we do PlayStation, right? We always, oh,
Exactly.
Nintendo, like, but Nintendo is probably out of all the big three, probably the uh, in terms of technology, right? They tend to be a bit archaic, but
Absolutely.
look how but here's the thing, they have carved out a niche, and this is why I think Microsoft's done this pivot. I think they've given up the fact that they've resigned to the fact that, you know what, we're not going to compete in that high end console space with Sony anymore. We just can't. We've lost that battle, and I know people get bent out of shape. I'm not saying that to hate on Xbox. I'm saying it because if you look at this generation, you look at how the market's reacted to the Xbox Series consoles. That's all you need to know,
Agreed.
right? I mean, and that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the Xbox that you own, or you can't enjoy the ecosystem, um, or that the Xbox hardware is bad. It's just that the market said no, we prefer this thing over the other thing. Um,
Exactly.
and I think part of that's just that I said this earlier, that behavioral inertia that you are up against when you are trying to pull people out of ecosystems. Like that's not an easy thing to do. Um, and there's that expectation. You know what you're going to get when you buy a
Hmm.
PlayStation. You know what you're going to get when you buy Nintendo. And I know people are saying, "Well, we know what a ROG Ally X is." I think you and I both know what it is. But
Yeah.
at least for me, Nate, at least for me, I'd be curious to think what you think. For me, at least, they've pivoted so many times now. Xbox has with their strategy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think I have an idea of where they're going because I follow gaming, but I think for the average consumer, they may not necessarily understand or want that direction, that what I think that migration or that primary support of, I think, PC by Microsoft, by Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely heading toward trying to give what you were talking about earlier on a more PC centric platform, which is that ease of use, and trying to kind of hybridize that to see if they can basically move people over into more of that hybrid environment. Whether they actually do that with their next console is to be determined. We still got to see what exactly happens with the Xbox ROG Ally X, which is going to be very expensive for one, which a lot of people don't seem to realize. But as someone who has gamed on PC for so long, the experience that Microsoft is actually promising with this overlay, and make no mistake, that's exactly what it is. It's like a big picture overlay that basically stops a lot of processes from running initially and tries to give you a console like experience on a PC handheld. But Windows is very much still there. But again, like I said, they're just trying to simplify that and get people comfortable with that and see that like the ROG is an entry into that to see what kind of happens, right? Which is why they stated, if people paid attention, that it's going to come later to other PC handhelds and eventually Windows itself, right? But Microsoft has promised, right, for years that they were going to improve the gaming performance and gaming optimization of PC gaming on Windows for over a decade now. Like the only reason they're even making a move all of a sudden is because notice how this came out of nowhere, but the Steam OS has been like the de facto choice once Steam started offering it.
I said that earlier in the show, and if you caught that, Nate, I think I
Mm-hmm.
was talking to Logic about this. I think that some of the play here is not giving up any additional ground to Valve and the Steam OS on PC portable devices, because like in my mind, I'm thinking if you can't compete with Sony now, and you're saying, you know what, we lost that fight, we're not gonna fight that good fight anymore. But this is our space, right? We own the desktop space, right?
Yep.
Like we own that space. And now we're also, and Microsoft's been in gaming, PC gaming for a long time. I mean, it's not, this is pre-Xbox, right? Pre-Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we can't give up that space. We can't let them encroach, in our backyard, right? Because we have this big platform, Windows. We had this gaming brand known as Xbox. Maybe we could integrate those things together, right? To get some footing. But I guess what I'm wondering, and is it too late? Because I keep thinking you have people that prefer. I mean, I think you would agree with this, Nate. People prefer Steam OS, the Steam store. I say Steam OS, but the Steam storefront, right? I mean, I dabble with Epic Games a bit on PC, but I'm mostly on Steam.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I mean, the only game I've ever bought on EGS, which I've talked about before, is I bought the $100 edition of Fortnite when it first came out, before it even had PvP. That's the only thing I've ever bought on the Epic Game Store, and I have 324 games, I think, on there. So, I mean, they're definitely that's their own strategy, but yeah, like you said, Steam is my preferred place to play. It's everyone's pretty much preferred place to play. If I'm going to purchase a game on PC, it's pretty much going to be on Steam. It's by default. As long as it can be purchased there, that's where I'm going to get it. So, I mean, you had people, even like you said, that have, because like Alan Wake and like I think it was Dying Light or Dead Island 2 was limited to EGS at one point. I've seen people say that they would pirate those games until they came to Steam and then they would purchase them. Like it's that serious for a lot of people on PC. So yeah, you're not wrong at all. And yeah, I think part of the thing is, like you said, is it too late? Um, that's part of the problem with Microsoft, is a lot of the times if they would have been proactive and not reactive, you know, they could have been ahead of this. They should have been doing this years ago. This whole, optimization for PC gaming and all this stuff, because they promised it, right? But I always tell people, and this is why you've spoken about this too, competition is necessary in order to force these companies to innovate and give us the products that they were promised. I pointed out not too long ago, uh, direct store. I don't know if you know what direct storage is, on PC, but direct storage is basically, in effect, what the PS5 does, right? When it utilizes the SSD. Um, Prior to direct storage, PCs were basically just utilizing SSDs to load games faster, right? Um, like the game itself always just kind of ran as is, right? There was no reason where you're like, oh, I need an SSD for this game. It just kind of runs faster and it'll read and write faster, but it wasn't utilizing that speed for anything gameplay wise. Well, when Ratchet and Clank finally came to PC, we finally got direct storage because it forced Microsoft to finally have to put it out, because in order for you to do the portal, utilize the portals the way that you did and get it to run properly, you needed to run via direct storage, where it utilizes the SSD to actually run the game at a faster rate to facilitate gameplay. And like I said, the key to that is, what I'm saying to that is, Microsoft promised that again over like a decade ago. And yet we only got it, a few years ago now, because, a game finally showed up that absolutely had to have it. So yeah, this is the same thing for them now with this. We're going to optimize PC gaming like never before. Everything is play anywhere. They're banking. What they're really banking on is that, I want to play here, and here, right? These multi-device owners. For me, it doesn't affect me. Like I don't want, like, play anywhere doesn't do anything. Another that to Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me still, Brett? Okay, sorry, Priscilla.
Yeah, I can
me,
hear you.
so.
I can hear you.
Okay, no, but yeah, I don't own a bunch of devices that is going to facilitate that, right? Like a friend of mine, he still has his Xbox, and he has a 4080 PC, so he goes back and forth between his setup, his gaming PC, and his Xbox. So play anywhere is like really great for him. But I think in reality, those gamers have kind of died down, because even some of the most diehard Xbox fans I've seen, they've all had PCs now. And once they've gotten the experience on PC, especially some of these people getting 5080s and even 5090s, like they're not going back to that console experience. Like they're done. Like they don't want the performance. They don't want to be told they're stuck at 30 FPS. And that's another thing that Microsoft is losing, largely because the performance race, when they brought out the Series S, right? So, you're developing for 2 SKUs and a bunch of other stuff. So I think they just made a mess by making too many things. And now they're trying to kind of clean it all up, but also offer you these games on all available platforms. And seeing if that is enough to keep people going.
And give people the option to, interact with different in and out different ecosystems on one platform, right?
Exactly.
Which is basically PC right now, right? That's the world.
It's literally just PC right now. Exactly.
Yeah, and so I think they are pivoting more PC focused. I think they've kind of like so I have a theory here, Nate, and this is what I wanted to talk about tonight too. Something I thought about, and then Tom Warren actually put out an article about this too. Microsoft just teased its next gen Xbox console. Nobody noticed. I noticed because this the way they release this and the way they've talked about it, this reminds me of other pivots, right? That they've done. This the same behavior, the same verbiage or talking points, right? You know, when they talked about, I remember when Quantum Break released on PC. Remember, Phil Spencer was like, "Oh yeah, this don't you know, just one game, so one game, whatever." I forget exactly what he said, you know. And so this seems to me, because I don't feel like it actually, and Logic brought this up to me. I didn't. There was a 12-minute Xbox on the Xbox webpage. There's like a 12-minute video about what the Xbox ROG Ally is, right? And they say it's a convergence device, right? And that's more what it is than what they were saying. Like, this is kind of like the next Xbox, which it isn't. I don't think this is the next Xbox, right? This is, I think what this is them. And I was talking to somebody, I won't mention their names. I don't want to get them in trouble, but I said this to him. I said, I think, I got to pull this up real quick because I want to, give me a sec here. Give me a sec here. I think that they are, I think this is them saying the future of the next console is going to be like this ROG Ally, right? This PC hybrid. Because and credit to Hip Hop Gamer, I've talked to about this, and I don't know if this is what he was talking about, but I don't think it was, because he talked about like a console hybrid, right?
Yeah, they did.
Where you switch between Windows and Xbox. So I believe that the next Xbox is and I think that this is them kind of easing their consumer base into this idea that we're not going to offer the traditional console plug and play experience. We're going to offer this hybrid. You know, it may be like optimal. It may be. I should say it's not going to be plug and play, right? But basically, we're gonna provide this hybrid. We're not going to make it, but our third party partnerships. We're gonna have third party partners create these. Remember, Steve did this.
I was going to say, you're talking about the Steam box. Yeah.
Remember the Steam boxes did this. I actually like the Steam box, the idea of the Steam box, but they have their own issues. But they have their own.
Well, the Steam boxes ran into one very big issue that consoles do not, right? Which is upgradability and too many SKUs. Like, that is what PC gamers love. That is both the options of PC is both the biggest benefit and the biggest downfall, right? Because at the end, you know, the game becomes about money and no longer that magical price point that gets you everything you need. And that is what consoles do really well, that I'm not really sure PC will ever really do. I do think if they're going to try it, this is the time to do it, because we're heading into a age of optimization, right? What I mean by that is, if you haven't, you should see it. The Witcher 4 tech demo that was shown off. They talk about a lot of technology, basically kind of reining in all the really cool stuff that they've been doing in Unreal for a while, like nanites and all this other stuff, right? Like, that stuff is incredibly tough to run, even on some of the best tech, right? Maxed out. But 5.6, which they showed, is basically giving you all that flair and all that ray tracing and all that goodness and that amazing lighting, and making it, you know, they're able to render it in a completely different way that is now making it playable, where you can get all that basically what looked like a PC experience, right? When you saw The Witcher 4, but it was 100% running on a standard PS5. So I think heading into the optimization era of, engines and like a combination of hardware will facilitate, some of the lower end spec stuff working better. Um, but you just got to be really careful not offering that unified experience if you do that, because again, they only had two SKUs this time, the Xbox Series X and the S, and the S sold way more. And it caused an issue where they really couldn't leave that unit behind. And now you have their developers and third-party developers having to develop for both of these SKUs, and some of them having issues here and there. And that was one of the issues they faced, right, with just two SKUs. While PlayStation has enjoyed that standard single player, or not single player, but single SKU experience. And even with the PS5 Pro, which is what I explain to people is different. The difference with the Pro is that the Pro is just an upgrade, right? It's not something you got to develop down for. You develop for the standard in mind, and then you crank it up a bit. That's how most of these developers deal with it. That doesn't really create an issue. So yeah, I think they just got to be really careful how they facilitate this transition into this, like you said, this kind of hybrid environment. But yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think this is definitely preparation for it. That's why they said every single one of our future titles will be play anywhere. But I think the key to that strategy is you need to make the titles you do have that are not play anywhere already. And that's the real big issue, because like a friend of mine who's a real big Xbox fan, who's awesome. I told him he's the Xbox fan that they needed. I wish all Xbox fans were like him. He plays like 70 games a year. He's a beast. But
said he's a beast.
But yeah, he's a beast. I'm just like, bro, I don't know how you do it.
I like how you say he's a beast.
Yeah, but like he plays everything. He has a PS5 and stuff, but like he's an Xbox fan. Like I'm like, yo, they needed you. They needed all of you to act like you in 2013. And they would have been a completely different position. But again, like I said, he's the one where, he's on the PC, he's got the hybrid environment, but he posted a post the other day where he said, only he went on his PC and library, and only 8% of his library is Play Anywhere. So it's like, while Play Anywhere is a great future promise, and for future games, you've got to get the rest of that library that longtime fans have had, and you've got to get it everywhere as well. So I hope that's something that they're doing, because again, if you're not, then you're not really giving people the benefits that the PC ecosystem offers, because we've talked about that as well, right? You can go back and you can play a game that's 20 years old. You might have to change a few settings and run compatibilities and stuff, but PC has like, infinite, retro compatibility. So now if you're going that route, you've got to manage that library that people do have and make sure they don't lose it going forward into this hybrid environment, because that's the problem facing the, the upcoming PC handheld that is the Xbox ROG Ally X, right? People are like, what is the number one thing you've seen? You've had to see it, right? Which is, can I play my Xbox games on it? It's an Xbox, right? I can play my Xbox games on it. That's what people want to know. And the answer right now is honestly no. You can't. It plays PC games. It doesn't play your Xbox games. So you can't just bust out your 360 catalog and play on it like you can your Xbox, because it's not actually an Xbox. Now, if they can fix that, I think they got some real ground. I think they got something impressive on their hands. So if they can fix that between now and the next console launch, I think they could do something really unique. Because PlayStation's biggest trouble right now is their backwards compatibility with their PS3 library and so on and so forth. So and PlayStation's definitely not going to take that lying down. From what I understand, they're working on their own ways to fix backwards compatibility with their PS3 games. So it's going to be interesting to see who does it better first. But yeah, I think PlayStation, like you said, is going to continue to do that single SKU and deliver that classic PlayStation experience that uh, depends on delivering top tier games. And honestly, the danger with Microsoft is that when you're developing for a bunch of SKUs and all this other stuff, optimization becomes an issue. Like you said, we've seen it when PlayStation studios and developers, multiple developers, have gone on record stating developing a game from the ground up with a single SKU in mind allows them much more time in the creative process, a lot less time debugging, and allows them basically to create their best work. So it's like that is something else, by the way, that the CEO brought up, that the way their system is designed, the PlayStation, it not only facilitates great gaming for and ease of use for their users, it does the same thing for the developers, which is something that Mark Cerny talked about. If you remember when he originally talked about how they designed the PlayStation 5 going forward, is making sure they were offering what developers needed to deliver the games that they wanted to deliver. And that's something that you also can't lose sight of. You can't just kind of offer whatever. You've got to consider, these people who are designing games for your platform, and what are you giving them to work with. And if you've got 10 different SKUs, now you're running into the same issue, PC's running into. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle it, man.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, like for me as a consumer, like a hybrid like Xbox PC, like Steam, like we talked about the Steam boxes, I gotta be like I would actually be interested in that. Like because then I'm looking at this might be an alternative to the PC upgrade, where like that's my biggest complaint with PC right now.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that's because my like Nate, I went down a rabbit hole, man. I for a long, I don't know if you may remember or may not remember, there was a time where I was talking a lot about truck tires on the show.
I do
um
remember that.
yeah, because I bought a 3/4 ton Silverado 2500 HD truck, and let me tell you, it's a cool truck, number one. Two, there's a lot of aftermarket stuff you can do to those trucks that is awesome. And where I started, where like the first place I started was tires. And I started looking at tires. My tires were about $2,000, right? Mounted and balanced. Okay. and now I'm looking at rims or wheels. So that's another 2,000. So
Mm-hmm.
so my
It gets expensive real fast.
yes, now I'm looking at like upgrading, my headlights to LED, like custom like OE type LED lights, which is different. It's a whole nother. It's like like $1,200. So it's another. Anyhow, my point is that for me as a consumer, my money has where I spend has changed a bit, because now I have this. I wouldn't say I'm an enthusiast truck owner, but I'm looking at updating things. I just got windows tinted. I was looking at potential like leveling kit. But anyhow, I don't want to bore the audience here or you, Nate. But my point is like this actually, and Tom Warren says Microsoft just teases next gen Xbox console. Nobody noticed. And this other person I talked to, and I won't name his name, but he kind of is in agreement with that assessment too.
Mm-hmm.
That this may be them positioning and getting everyone ready to the idea that this is what Xbox, not just from a handheld perspective, but from a home console or set top box, this is what that's going to look like. It's going to be third parties. And I can't say I totally disagree based on the financials we've seen on Xbox hardware from
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft's own financial reports, and the fact that those consoles have not been selling. You asked Falky, why would you raise the price of the Xbox console? And he said, well, probably because you're not selling a lot, which means that you're not benefiting from the economies of scale as it relates to ordering chips, things like that from A&D and manufacturing. Because you're manufacturing at a larger scale and you're ordering chips by by large numbers, you get that the economies of scale benefit you. It's just cheaper, right? When you don't
Yeah,
do that, the cost goes up to manufacture and things like that. So he's like, that's probably why they're doing this. So, but that comes from not selling enough consoles, right? You're
it
not
does.
manufacturing enough because you're not selling enough. So I think and I could be wrong. I'm gonna say that, by the way, because a lot of YouTubers don't say that, right?
Hmm.
Oh, this is gonna happen, and I'm just I saw someone in the chat. I think it was Component saying we don't sit in the board meetings at MS, so that's fair. But this is just based on what I've seen. Um, the in terms of the uptake and the challenge they've had in selling Xbox consoles, and the fact that if you look at their financials, sales growth has decreased negative percentage, um, and now, I think they're pivoting to this kind of like, we're going to unify PC console. We're going to focus probably more on PC, I think, or this hybrid thing. And I
Hmm.
think that, like, to Tom Warren's point, and this person I talked to in DM, and what I was thinking about, and I said this on Crossfire yesterday, I do think that, and Nate, I do think that this is kind of that easing, right? And this is just based on how they've eased their consumer base into other pivots or initiatives and new things they were doing. I think this is that. That
No, I 100% agree with you. I think this is definitely that. Um, I'm interested to see, like I said, how it works out for them. Mainly because, like I said, if this really works the way that we're thinking, and the console hybrid works the same way, my question really is, where are you securing that 30% cut that you used to get from, people purchasing things from your store, if they are no longer purchasing it from your store? Because, like I said, Play Anywhere, which we talked about, is not enough for a lot of people to purchase it there, right? Because a PC handheld can still play a Steam game. You know what I mean? So I don't need Play Anywhere. I don't need that in order to play on my PC handheld. So again, that doesn't really benefit me, right? Um, so that's what I'm really interested in. Like, if you're really going to offer the Steam store and EGS and all this stuff on not only just this handheld, but this future hybridized device, then like, where are you getting the rest of that money that you're definitely going to lose if people are having the option to purchase from the Steam store, etc. So that's really where I'm curious, because I was explaining to someone the way PlayStation's market works is they can't afford to lose that, the way that PlayStation invest. And you've even seen it, right? Like I said, we may not be in the boardrooms on these things, but there's tons of data out there, right? PlayStation has, like, almost year over year, been the highest selling accessory platform ever, like every year. So that's a combination of selling DualSense hardware, their VR headset, headsets, whatever, all their accessories they sell, but all that is facilitated by people purchasing their hardware initially, the PS5. Um, like I said, myself, I've got like 8 or 10 controllers or something like that, right? Um, and I don't use my DualSense on my PC. I have an Xbox controller for that, just because it just, again, ease of use, right? Like you said earlier, my Xbox controller, I press a button, I turn it on, I don't link it to anything else. It guaranteed to link, and it just turns on the moment I need a controller for my PC. So all those other things that I've purchased are because of that, right? And the other games that I purchased, like when I purchased Death Stranding here recently, um, PlayStation didn't make that game, because Hideo has the licensing back for that, but they get a 30% cut of everybody that purchases that through their my subscription, even to Fortnite, right? I forgot what it's called right now, but there's like a monthly subscription. But I specifically have it through PlayStation, so that I know they get a cut from that, because they invest. I'm confident in the investments that they make in gaming that benefit me from the games that they make, right? So again, like, you start losing all that if people are now purchasing those things, or through the EGS or through Steam. So that's another thing where I'm really kind of curious, is like, where are you going to recoup all this revenue that you're ultimately going to lose if you're offering all these other storefronts for people to purchase from? because I'm telling you right now, like Play Anywhere is not going to be benefit enough for the
So
majority of your people to purchase there.
yeah, yeah, and that's an interesting question, and this is why I'm speculating that maybe that not having the burden of hardware now
Hmm.
and licensing that name out, that brand, to other hardware manufacturers like Asus to create the hardware for you.
Yeah,
Maybe that's where that's I don't. And
they
actually, we have Nib
reduce
with
they
us.
reduce overhead.
Yeah, I
I,
mean
I
that's
see. I see
and
you.
that's what I'm wondering. And so we have Nib here with us. Nib,
Hey,
welcome to the
dude.
show. No worries. I know, and I appreciate you coming on. I know it's different time
I was
zone. It's
playing
late.
KCD2, and you know when you're old when you just fall asleep and don't remember falling asleep. I'm just like,
I can't.
I'm
I
just
shouldn't
like,
laugh.
oh shit, the game is on, and I've got an OLED as well. I was like, whoops, like, it's on in the background.
So Nib, I don't know if how much you caught, but I think you heard me say this on Crossfire
Mhm,
yesterday, and Tom Warren put out this article.
mhm,
I think Tom and I did speak to somebody today. I won't mention their name, but they kind of nodded to what I said and what
mhm.
Tom has said, that this is probably a preview of Microsoft just based on
Yeah,
their own behavior, right? And
yeah,
how they do these slow pivots, right? They're kind of like they're feeding you little drops like little breadcrumbs, right?
I
Um,
agree. Yeah,
I think this handheld, this partnership with Asus, I think this is them like, hey, we're not going to make a traditional console anymore. Like we lost that
mm,
fight, PlayStation. We're not going to compete
mm,
with the high end space. We can't compete on the that low end space with Nintendo because they dominate that market with the Switch, and then PlayStation dominates that high end. We're gonna go like we're gonna double down on what we know. That's PC, right? We got the
yeah,
OS. We rule the desktop space. We've been in PC gaming for a while. We have this Xbox brand, which I think, I mean, despite the struggles that it's had, the brand has had selling consoles and gaining traction against PlayStation. Nevertheless, it's still a brand, right? It's still a brand that has
yeah,
valuable IPs, Call of Duty, Halo, the
mm,
other the Forzas. I mean, those are valuable franchises, right? They're
mm,
known franchises. They're no commodities.
mhm.
I think that this is kind of that preview, that easing of to the consumers, the Xbox consumers. Hey, the next Xbox hardware is going to be probably more like this,
Mm,
like the Ally set top box,
mm,
right? And our third party partners are going to manufacture. We're not going to do it. And I
yeah,
say that too with the caveat of, or with I should caveat, but with them looking at their financials and how bad the hardware has sold for them. We know this because
yeah.
we've seen financials. What do you think, Dib?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree. Like, even though I'm someone who is deeply ingrained in their like console side of things, and I really want them to continue to pursue the console thing, and that's a subjective, personal thing. Like, I understand the business side of things could be very different. Maybe the business side of things, it's not lucrative enough for them to go into that space. And like even today, CEO of PlayStation, Nishino, he in one of his answers about in about Microsoft potentially bowing out of the console space, he did actually mention, look, with our console, we do everything from the ground up, from chip design to manufacture to everything. He said, from the back end to the manufacturer, we're part of every process. I don't think it's a coincidence that he mentioned that. I'm pretty sure he's cognizant of the fact that there's been the Xbox ROG Ally. Maybe he knows more than we do about the manufacturing on the other side of this, with their competitors and stuff. Obviously, he won't know the exact details of any hardware, but he might have some understanding of what partners are doing. So again, maybe that's a tidbit. Maybe he's saying, look, we make our own hardware. We're differentiating ourselves. So maybe it is a precursor to what is going to come from Xbox. It certainly does seem, because I always find like with Xbox, you can kind of tell based on what the Xbox aligned influencers are saying, or the narrative that they're pushing, as to what is on the horizon for Xbox's next pivot. And I feel like there's a really like concerted effort to blend the lines between PC and Xbox. Like, this PC handheld is actually an Xbox now. PC is actually Paris put out a tweet today that says Windows is Xbox, Xbox is Windows. Now, I don't know when that has been a thing. To me, again, as a console Xbox player, maybe the core foundation of Xbox UI is based on the Windows kernel and core, but fundamentally the whole point was that the OS on the console side is totally different from Windows operating system on the PC side, and it's much more fat free. It doesn't obviously, you can't install like Office and apps and everything else because it's custom designed to be, smoother and more fat free and specifically designed just for game use. Same with all the development tools and everything. That was always the thing with consoles, is they are a closed platform optimization suite that maximizes the specific hardware that they're built around, instead of sort of merging on the PC side where you have more abstract. So it does seem like that is kind of in the direction they're going, even based just off the marketing, not just from Microsoft, but from their like mouthpieces. So that is one thing. The other thing I noticed that Phil Spencer in his interviews, he does keep reminding us lately, in the last 3 interviews I've noticed, he makes it a point, again, it's just reading between the lines, he's made it a point to clarify that he's beholden to the higher ups in Xbox, right? He keeps saying, we have a business to run. Obviously, Satya Nadella has expectations of me. It's almost like he's saying, look, guys, it's like, I have to do this because this is the business now. I have to answer to someone else, especially after ABK. So I'm thinking like, okay, clearly Tim Stewart, CFO, whatever, Satya Nadella, the higher ups, there's an element of pressure. Game Pass hasn't performed, or you haven't performed in this area or that area. So, there has to be changes, right? We need to be financially viable or sustainable, and the growth we want or whatever. If we can't get it there, we've got to get it elsewhere. But it's weird because to me, it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot, because the more and more you deprioritize the console side of things, the more and more you're going to lose this 30% cut. If you look at PlayStation's financials and some of the material they put out in their presentation today, one of the big things is basically a lot of their revenue comes from that 30% cut, comes from people playing third-party games, like Fortnite and Roblox and Warzone and GTA 5 or whatever. And irrespective of how much money they spend, which is increasingly high, PlayStation always get a 30% cut of every microtransaction and every skin and all of that. Obviously, the less your ecosystem, your console install has a market penetration, the less of that you're going to get. But Microsoft keep doubling down in the other way and going on the PC side of things. So my thing is, how does that make business sense? And the only thing I can think is Xbox and Microsoft, they do have a thing where they tend to push business metrics or ideas that have cross-pollination with other aspects of their business. So they are heavy into cloud because they have Azure. They can essentially not subsidize, but they can piggyback off of the technology stacks, etc., that they already have and the expertise they already have. And it's good for shareholders as well. Look, we're exploring cloud here. It's making us all this money. And I think the only thing I can think of is that the fear, and I read an article about this, is impending sort of impact of Steam OS and how much more broader impact, or so let's just say market penetration, that could have.
We talked about that. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Like that this play the handheld play may also be as a reaction to that. Like
Yes, as in a
Steam to have
protectionism against Steam OS, yeah. And then the byproduct is that if you are dominant in the Windows space, then at least you can ensure that Windows operating system continues to be a de facto for you, not just gamers, but just general consumer PC rigs, right? And obviously, if they can have the byproduct of ensuring people stay within the Windows ecosystem, there is another revenue stream. And obviously, like if you and me build a gaming PC and it's Windows based, and we end up using Xbox products, buying Windows stuff, maybe installing Office 365 and everything else, they have a kind of secondary line of revenue that could benefit them, right? Again, it ties in, it's cross-pollination with other Microsoft products. So maybe that is like the play with Satya. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, we're just theorizing here. We have no idea. It could be completely wrong.
Yeah, Nib, thank you for saying that we're theorizing, because my pet peeve sometimes with influencers is that they stand on it like they're in fact.
No.
It's the truth, But some of this theorizing is based on like past behavior,
exactly,
communication from leadership at Microsoft, financials, the market, right? How the market's reacted to their products, and PlayStation, Nintendo, things like that. So it's not, you're not, that's where I think some of this.
I mean, it's kind of like an informed estimation. Let's put it that way. Like, it's not like we're just throwing daggers in the night, like without
exactly.
it's based on business and metrics and things they've done in the past, etc. So that is one thing that maybe could be taking place. Me personally, I think like it is potentially the wrong strategy and pivot, and I think that 30% cut that they used to get, was so prominent in their business, is the most important piece of the pie, and they seem to be sacrificing that. But I don't know what the bleed is into other business and product lines, and how much other revenue they can make with that tie on the PC side. And like we said, if they're protecting against SteamOS or any other sort of impending threat in that area, maybe that to them is a higher priority. I don't know. As a gamer, it's quite disappointing to me. Like I said, I want Xbox to continue in the console space. And it's a really weird thing, because like Xbox, it's not really hardware that is the reason they have faltered the last decade or so. Not really. It's really the exclusives and release cadence of them. And it's a funny thing where they finally have the studios, they finally have the IP, they finally have a good cadence of releases. But because of this kind of like capitulated console install that they've created for themselves by pushing PC and pushing Game Pass so strongly over the last 7-8 years, they simply are not in a position where the console side alone can sustain that anymore. Like 40 studios or whatever it is, they have operating costs that are like orders of magnitude higher. Like they went from 6 studios to 40 studios and tens of thousands of developers and employees. So, and they have kind of created let's just say like a consumer base that is less and less inclined to buy games because they're simply choosing to play them on Game Pass. And something has to give. Like Game Pass has not grown in nearly the way they thought it would. They really thought they would be at 60 million subs this year and 44 million in 2023. So something has to give. Like the cost and ROI sort of that they had in mind just did not play out. Like obviously, if you're getting 35 million worth of subscription revenue instead of 60, and it's not really 35 because a large portion of that, or at least a sizable portion of that, is from Xbox Live being converted to core. So really, we're kind of similar in the 25, 26 million range. Something has to give. So I get it. I get why they're pivoting to multi-platform, because they need that additional source of revenue, and the exclusives are not selling enough. But it is disappointing, and it's like they're kind of just at that point now where they could really have competed if they stayed, with that traditional model, but it's just not financially viable for them anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting, Nib. I was thinking about what you were saying about that 30% cut that they used to get, where they might get, and this is where I go into that maybe a way around that is, you talk about overhead, everything. It's just not R&Ding on new hardware and manufacturing it, right? That this is where you come in and you start licensing Xbox, to maybe Asus. Remember, we talked about, Nate and I were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
You remember the Steam boxes? Remember the Steam boxes, which were, by the way, I actually liked the Steam boxes. The controllers were abominations, but the actual design of the box was nice.
So Okay, so I'll speak on that. I think, yeah, maybe that could save them money per se, but I think the way it's a slippery slope is that when you work with a third party partner, not only are sort of the custom side of technology stack and the direct line to your studios and developers not as satiated, because now a third party is taking those decisions. Yeah, you can have some level of conversation with them, but it's not really the case. Like Asus developed the ROG Ally X. No part of that design is really, you know, pursued by Microsoft, which is why everything about it is like an existing hardware stack, right? Even the Z2 in it is not custom, really. It's just based on the API on Steam Deck. I know it's an A moniker, but from the leaks that we understand, it's kind of just another variant in terms of TDP is lowered slightly, similar to the Legion Go. But basically, it's essentially similar to what we have in other handhelds. There's nothing really specifically Xbox custom about it. So the problem you have with that is you have less sort of customization on the hardware side of things, and two, the third party, it has to be a profitable means for them, right? They take their own cut. Presumably, Xbox won't want to make a loss on it either, and won't want to subsidize based on the prices of their consoles and stuff as well. They're not really in the game of subsidy anymore. Maybe they'll go back to it. I don't know. I could be wrong. So you have a situation where it's not really like customized hardware as well. You don't have the same mass manufactured discount. Plus, a third party has to take their own cut and margin as well as your margin on top. And that puts you in a situation. And then you have the PC side of the OS and everything as well. You have a situation where you may have not just more expensive hardware than your competitor, less customized and suited to specific gaming customization and optimization task as your competitor, but you also have a situation, yeah, where it could be more expensive because the third party has to take the licensing as well. So while they could do that, I don't know if they'll be competitive enough in the space if they do that on the console side. Obviously, they're kind of diverging in the handheld side, which PlayStation is not really in right now. Hence, they can get away with that. But if they do it on the console side, I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily going to work out for them.
Yeah, I mean that's that's the big question, right? Would that, to your point, would that work out? Or could they carve out their own slice of the pie in the market for people who may want that hybrid PC? You know, maybe those people who, I mean, because we know that people will buy high end consoles. We know that PS5 Pro, right? Maybe that's the play, and maybe going after people who are in that lower end PC ecosystem, right? Who maybe, you know, okay, maybe I don't want to upgrade to the next AMD or Nvidia card.
Yeah.
I know that's a lot of maybes, right? But that I'm just, you know, we're just spitballing here. But I think some of the but then I think about the challenges with that too, right? Like just outside of whether or not that would work in the market, like that, you know, because I don't think if you release a device like that, you're necessarily competing with Sony at that point of the PlayStation, because I think it's a different device at that point. It's basically a PC set top box, right? Kind of like the Steam box, running Windows or the Xbox UI. But I think the consumer perception, like if they go down this path, and I think this is kind of, I know there are people in the Xbox who are entrenched in the Xbox ecosystem. I know what this thing does, and I get that. But there are people that I've talked to with the Xbox ecosystem that are still unsure what it does. Does it play my console games, right? All those things. But I think the consumer perception is potentially a challenge, right? Because there are people, right? The Xbox has been around 25 years. There are people that traditionally look at Xbox as a brand, as a console first product, right? That is what they know. And there are people that know Windows is associated with desktop or PC gaming. You merge those two things together, you know, I think you run the risk of maybe confusing consumers or gamers who expect like distinct experiences. And I think I'm hearing some of that, right? With some of those questions, like, how does this thing play my Xbox consoles natively, right? Is it an Xbox console? Logic calls it you know, big window, what does he call it? Big screen. Ah, shit, I don't remember. Call it like big Windows Xbox mode or something, or you know, on the ROG Ally Xbox. But the other thing is kind of interesting. the UI features are going to be coming to the ROG allies.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of a head scratcher for me.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Because I get it. Like in the local space, when you're running this Xbox adapted UI and OS or whatever, maybe it would use less resources, etc. In the instant that it's running, but Windows is still running in the background, like the operating system Windows. I don't know if people know, but on the ROG Ally you can actually even install Office 365. So it will never be the finite, like granular, fat-free kind of operating system that it is on consoles, because you still have other things and other feature sets or whatever, and obviously it's a much more rich and featured operating system on the background than you have on consoles. So even when you're saying about how like people do invest in the PS5 Pro, maybe they would in a high end, but if Xbox do release sort of like basically a PC, Xbox branded PC, it probably won't be a high end PC. It will probably be a mid range or a low end PC that is not going to have the same customized hardware and sort of operating system and API like what's the word? Again, granular optimization that the console side of things has, because now it's a PC, which tends to not have the same closed platform focus. So, like with the PS5 Pro, when you buy that, you're not just getting, yes, it's similar, like it's basically mid-range hardware, right? But with customizations, like the I/O setup, the decompression blocks, the Tempest engine. It even has DDR3 now, which they use for the operating system, so you can have more RAM for the games. The sort of AI hardware for upscaling is, it's not in any RDNA 3 GPU. The ray tracing is from RDNA 4. So like it has a lot of things that are more bespoke. And then the API itself that PlayStation uses and the shader language, it's all custom. I said this before, but PlayStation 5 API is proprietary. For PS5, it's AGC and AGCX. So they don't even use DirectX. Literally everything about the PlayStation, top down, is made to maximize optimization and hardware for the purpose of gaming.
That's a great point, Neb. About the customization, the optimization of consoles, because we know that the hardware, there's hardware fragmentation in the PC space, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that leads to that doesn't necessarily lead to consistent gaming experiences for people.
Yeah.
I mean,
like
Nate and I are probably having different gaming experiences right now.
Yeah.
No,
like I always hear people like sort of like criticize the CPU on the console side, and I get it. Like I would agree as well. These CPUs are pretty rubbish, to be honest. Like, but the CPUs on the console side, especially on the PS5, they're not doing the same task that the CPUs in your PC are. So even with direct storage on the PC side, when you're running a game and it's doing all the decompression and paging, and so basically because of the way games are designed now and they're more designed around SSDs, there's way more data that's being decided whether to asset stream into the GPU memory from the hard drive, etc. And all of that data that is flowing in and out and being asset streamed, the CPU has to green light, like, yeah, decompress that, don't decompress that, yeah, this is good, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, I'm layman's terming it. But on the PC side, that even with direct storage, so your GPU can help out with decompression instead of the CPU still has to do all the check-in and paging. And it's a ton of that now because of how much data is being asset streamed in and out. So that takes a lot of effort and processing on the CPU side. Likewise, with running all sorts of things like audio and 3D audio, blah, 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 the CPU is doing that unless you have a sound card. On the PlayStation side, the CPU is not doing any of that. Literally, they said 8 Zen 2 cores worth of processing is in the I/O and decompression and custom cache scrubbers and all of that stuff. That takes all that away from the CPU. same when you're running 3D spatial audio or whatever. The CPU is not doing any of that. The Tempest audio chip is doing that, which they said was equivalent to a Jaguar CPU. So it's like, I don't think PC gamers are necessarily cognizant of the fact that the CPU in that system is not burdened with nearly as many tasks as the CPU on the PC side. And obviously there's the operating system and stuff in the background as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
yeah,
was gonna say I was gonna say you're
yeah,
not wrong at all. Like even Linus had to basically admit, no matter what you do, like the overhead on PC is just way different, and it's part of the reason why you have to build these massively powerful rigs to
yeah,
get some of
yeah,
these great experiences because there's so much going on. Like I mean, at any given time frame you people can't even imagine the amount of background tasks going on my PC. Like just me, I mean, I'm a power user, so I know I always overspec my builds and go crazy because with like 64 gigs of RAM, I have a 13900K and the 4090, right? Like I at the lowest I always went with like the 80 series, right? Um, but I do that because
mm,
I've got 64 tabs of Google in the
yeah,
background
exactly, yeah,
and a bunch of other stuff. I also run
yeah,
my Plex server from it and all these other things. And then I'm playing a game, right? And then, like you said, how you play the game is vastly different than how it runs on a PlayStation, which they can program literally to the metal and get
exactly,
every ounce out of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And like I said, that's why I said people don't and I know you probably enjoyed this as much as I did if you saw
mm,
the Witcher 4 thing. And I keep bringing this up though because people are gamers tend to think about things that they know about,
mm,
and seeing future tech that hasn't come out yet,
mm,
it seemed implausible for the Witcher
mm,
4 to run like that on a standard PS5. But I'm
yeah,
like, they're doing nothing but working with this single set of hardware
yeah,
and making vast improvements on the engine side of things. And that is why you're seeing massive improvements this way, like
yeah,
you've never seen before, because the tech had so much room and so much more to work with
yeah.
that you were able to,
So
now see what it really can do late game. And people, I
yeah,
don't know why people seem to have forgotten that, right? Like how
yeah,
much more we get out of late game consoles. And it's
yeah.
like, it's only just starting. This is
It's
only
only
year
started, yeah.
5. Yep.
Exactly, because we've been sort of held back by cross gen for a longer period of time, this gen. So we won't
Hmm.
actually start to see what these systems can really flex until, sort of now from this point onwards. And I was going to say to your point, right? So Digital Foundry did initially when the PS5 came out, if you notice most of the comparisons online, like a Gamer Nexus, etc., they were like comparing with a GTX 1060. They were like, this is the range of performance, right? And I always
Hmm.
said back then, early tests are not going to be comparable because they haven't had finalized dev kits for a long time. Dev kits before a console was actually launched, dev kits are constantly changing. That until the hardware is finalized, they're getting sort of estimations of what the hardware could be, and it's constantly evolving. So developers are kind of developing around a moving target. And then obviously it's finalized maybe a few months before or 6 months before, whatever, they get the final dev kits. And then it's go time. But really they haven't had that much time with it. So
Exactly.
I always say those early tests are irrelevant. So Digital Foundry did another test a few years later into the PS5's life. I think it's like the video is like a year or two old or something now. And they said, the GPU equivalent is roughly the 6700. And in that same test, the PS5 basically outperforms a 2070 Super almost across the board. And originally the target was like a 2060, 2070, and it outperforms the 2070 Super and is comparable to the 6700. But the interesting thing about that test, if you go now to the YouTube video and click, description and look at their test rig, which they used for all the GPUs in the test, well, guess what? It's using a state of the art i9 CPU that on its own costs more than the PS5, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe those games are like GPU bound, but the CPU still makes a difference, and they are using not just a comparable GPU, but they're using a CPU that is excessively outperforms the PS5, and yet the PS5 is still outperforming this 2070 i9 combination. right? Again, because the PS5 CPU has other assistance from other components. Now, I know what people will say if they're watching it. Oh, the PS5 Pro is getting spanked in the recent, Digital Foundry test. But again, to that, I would say it's the same thing as that 1060 comparison. These early comparisons are mute. What games are they comparing to the PS5 Pro? Games that got post-launch patched. They weren't even developed with the PS5 Pro in mind, right? Like Black Myth. I know Richard from Digital Foundry. One of the games he tested was Black Myth Wukong in specifically the performance mode. Go and look at Oliver's Black Myth Wukong PS5 Pro video, and what do you notice? For the PS5 Pro performance mode in particular, there's no difference to the PS5. He said it runs equivalent settings and equivalent performance. So clearly that is an outlier, that they haven't really done any work to that. They're not even using it in Game Boost, right? So that is not a good comparison. And then one of the other ones, Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 was already one of the worst ports for the PS5 Pro. Like, it literally, Digital Foundry was one of their worst examples. So again, it's like going back to that 1060 comparison with the PS5. These early comparisons are not going to be indicative of what the PS5 Pro performance is. And the newer and newer titles, you can see more and more of a differentiating difference. Like even Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, like it's the quality mode from PS5 plus additional settings plus double the frame rate. So the more and more time developers have with the PS5 Pro dev kits, and the more and more time from the ground up they have as they're developing game for the PS5 Pro, the more and more of a difference we'll see. Obviously, if it's just a quick patch on a game that already released, you're not going to get the same kind of utilization.
Agreed.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Again, we're kind of, I'm going to reiterate this to the chat and those listening later. We're not definitively saying that this is going to be the case with the next Xbox console. I'm of the opinion that I think this is, and you see Tom Warren's article here, but I do want to say I think it's clear they're unifying. I mean, you talked about the talking points, Nib, the influencers, right? they're all kind of reading off the same playbook, the same note cards right now, and it's really Xbox is Windows, Xbox. That to me, that is, look, Microsoft unifying PC and unifying PC and Xbox.
Yeah,
and I do think there's some challenges.
Yeah.
Like, so, and I mentioned some of those challenges we talked about, like, from a hardware perspective in terms of customization, optimization. I think market competition, you talk about Steam OS. You got to convince gamers to care about the Xbox, PC gamers to care about the ecosystem instead of Steam.
Yeah.
That's
this
an uphill
is
battle.
the thing, like, with so much of the kind of like marketing bluster around the Xbox ROG Ally X and Xbox ROG Ally is the UI. And I get it, like, obviously you do want a good UI, but the UI is not really like the priority for me. What's the performance with the games? Like, how does it run the games? And it's weird how there is so much talk about the UI. Oh, it's a great new UI, custom UI, but we haven't really had any deep dives. We haven't had a real insight or just elongated video footage of how the UI works and the consistency of its performance. It's like little snippets and snapshots. Maybe I just haven't seen it. Maybe I haven't paid enough attention. I have been browsing and watching some impressions and stuff. Maybe I just haven't watched the right video. But that is weird to me as well. Like, we don't know the price. We don't really know the performance. We don't really have a deep insight into the UI. So it's kind of, a lot of it is that PR bluster without kind of the technical analysis and deep dive. And it's weird to me. Another thing that occurred to me is, like, influencers got hands-on and access, and Digital Foundry didn't, at least early.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, so you're giving it to the people who are going to glaze, but not to the people who really know this stuff and who can really, with a critical eye, analyze the performance side of things and give you like a more honest or whatever, or more tech-centric take on the UI and everything else. So that to me was strange as well. Like that there's a bit of a weird lopsided thing going on here. So up until I see like the tech deep dives, I need to see if it's all that these influencers are, making out to be.
Yeah, I was gonna say the last person I'm believing is the influencer who is gonna have one of these in their mailbox for free
Yeah,
2 weeks ahead of schedule. Like,
yeah,
I'm sorry, because you
yeah,
ain't gotta make a $8,000 to $1,000 investment in this product. So I really don't care what you got to say, to be honest.
yeah. But like Xbox is Windows, Windows is Xbox. Like nobody ever said that about Xbox. So that's clearly something he's heard from like the Xbox press or like PR team, and he's run with it. But when has anyone ever said that about Xbox in the history of Xbox as a console platform? Like, we've never heard that. So it's a
Yeah,
clear,
that's all just now happening
yeah, exactly.
within that space. Because I always tell people, I was like, nothing. I was like, my nothing in my computer is made by Microsoft. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
call it an Xbox. It is not an Xbox. I
yeah,
use
yeah,
an
yeah.
Xbox controller, but I could also use one of 450 other available controllers. That's
Exactly.
just a choice. Yeah, but it is not an Xbox. Nothing about it is Xbox.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
My Plex server does not run from an Xbox. It is a
yeah, yeah,
PC that happens to have a Windows operating system.
yeah,
So I was like, yeah, that's definitely not the case. But yeah, that's another thing they've been trying to make synonymous as, again, a lot of Xbox influencers and YouTube
yeah.
channels have transitioned into PC, and they're trying to maintain the appearance of being
Mm,
Xbox centric while
mm.
playing on their 5090s.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly,
yeah, that's
exactly.
been a funny
It's
thing.
a really
90s.
funny thing because I was on like Mooch's podcast, and Wooly and Death Singer were like proper going at it. They're having some debate.
That was a very interesting back
It
and
was
forth, Nib.
it was very
And by,
interesting because
and by the way, like our friends across the pond, when they debate, it sounds so much better than what we do here in the States. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nib.
no, but they were kind of both right in their own ways. It's just I found it basically boiled down to terminology. Even
They're
though I
arguing
do think
semantics.
it's semantics, yeah. Even though I
Yeah.
do think Wooly's overriding point was true, because it's not it's a PC handheld that plays the existing PC library, and even though many Xbox games are play anywhere, obviously if you buy a third party console game, it's not going to run on that system. You have to buy a third party PC game in order to run it. But what was interesting to me is obviously Dessinger saying, "Oh, it plays Xbox games," and he's like, "No, it doesn't play Xbox games. It plays the PC games, right?" But it was semantics in the sense that Dessinger was talking about it plays Xbox games from an Xbox publishing perspective, and Wooly was talking about it doesn't play Xbox games from a Xbox console perspective. So, it occurred
Yeah,
to me that
I'm with Wooly on that one.
yeah, so it occurred to me that that is also another probably intentional conflation, because like when you say, oh, it's an Xbox, but it's not really an Xbox console, but it plays Xbox published games, but you're blurring the lines again. Obviously, on PlayStation, there isn't that problem, because when you say it's a PlayStation game, you understand you mean the publishing side, because the console itself is called a PS5. It's not called a PlayStation. Um, so there's that distinction. Like you can say, yes, on the PC side, I'm playing a PlayStation game. You don't mean you're playing a PS5 game. But obviously on the Xbox side, that is blurred. Which again, they're trying to conflate Windows with Xbox and Xbox with console. It's probably all intentional, like blurring the lines. So if
Oh,
we're
it is
like,
definitely intentional.
yeah, 100%, yeah. So if we do get this kind of move away from console, well, I mean, say if we do, it kind of seems like it's happening. Um, then yeah, all of that ties in. It's kind of like slowly moving your consumers away from the perception and understanding and draw to the console side of things. And yeah, it's very, very interesting how Xbox roll out their PR for these kind of pivots. It's so fascinating to me because like it happens every time. Like when they, even when PC day-date ubiquitous releases, if you go back to the interviews, Phil Spencer said, we're not releasing games on PC, we're only releasing a handful. It's not going to be the broader strategy. And then obviously they have every release on PC. Same thing they did with the multi-platform releases. Now, even with like cross-gen, when it was like a thing, and Phil Spencer said, cross-gen is really just a thing that it's more like fans talk about. It's not really a real thing, even though developers themselves have been telling us for decades it really is a thing. So it's funny how, like, these sort of PR thing, messaging gets sent out, and then it's interesting how the rest of the influencers regurgitate it, and sometimes they go back on it afterwards and be like, yeah, I was wrong about that, but you've already shared it, like you've already tried to penetrate the mind sphere of consumers with this whatever messaging. And I feel like that's kind of happening with this Xbox Rogue Ally. It's really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Deb. Fair point. Gentlemen, it is past the 11 o'clock hour. Nib, I know it's late where you are too, and Nate, I think it's getting later for you. I know you're like 3 hours, 2 hours behind. 2 or 3 hours behind?
It's 3 right now. It's 3 right now because Arizona does not do daylight savings time.
Oh my god!
So now I match Pacific time.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So
it was funny because I came on. I literally just woke up, opened my laptop, checked the charts, and then I came on your show, and I was like, I probably shouldn't come on because I might be half asleep and mumbling and bumbling, but it was all right.
No, you were. I mean, Nib, you walked in here like you were wide awake. Well, you are wide awake.
So it was not too bad. There we go.
Yeah, but first, I want to thank everyone in the live chat for hanging out with us tonight for the last 3 hours. This was a longer 3 hours and 12 minutes, actually, or 3 hours and 13 minutes. And so thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it. Please do the YouTube thing, hit the like button, consider subscribing, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. And also want to thank our guests this evening, Nate and Nib. And Nate, I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do, please let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at The Real Nate or Blue Sky, same handle. You can find me tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time on the Otter Players podcast. And otherwise, man, you can find me gaming because that's what it's all about right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could find me playing Claire Obscure Expedition 33 for a second time.
Hey, I'm about to join you, man. I'm probably gonna 1,000 point it or whatever the heck you call it on Xbox. I don't know. They need a diamond or something, man. I hate calling it 1,000 pointed a game or something. It's so silly.
That's my game of the year. Easy, by the way. Easy.
Oh, it's mine too. And the second playthrough, the second playthrough with the with Claire Expedition, I've realized that I missed a lot. I am encountering new optional bosses. I just encountered the floating manor.
Okay.
Which I didn't go to.
So you play. It sounds like you played a lot like Logic did. Like you got through it in a healthy manner, but you didn't like go crazy with the exploration and finding everything, because that's how I did.
Yeah, and that's a great thing about the game. Like you can either go straight through, or you have the option of exploring and the game opening up. Like I love that, right? That there's different ways to approach it. I would tell anyone playing this, if you can, explore, because you get a little more background to the story.
Oh, you get it really fleshes things out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but
you should. I was gonna say the one thing I don't think some people are really grasping, right? And it's like whether you like it or not, and I don't know, some JRPG fans are being weird about how excited a lot of people are for this game, which I don't get, because it don't get no bigger of a JRPG fan than myself. But a lot of the one thing I've seen from a lot of people that I don't know if people are paying attention to, a lot of people are calling Claire Obscure Expedition 33 the greatest game they have ever played. And I think that is profoundly
It's
amazing.
subjective, though, isn't it? Yeah.
No. I mean, it's definitely subjective, but what I mean though is like you don't see that's not a common thing. Like even when people played Elden Ring, right, and it sold 20 million, I
Mm,
didn't see that common phrasing from a lot of
mm,
people. But like I've seen now like hundreds of people come across my timeline when they finally have finished it and be like, that is by far either the greatest or one of the greatest games I've ever played. Like that wording is something like I feel like gamers really reserve for something
mm,
amazing that they just played or experienced. And I definitely think that Expedition 33 is definitely worth that praise, having finished it and got the platinum. And man, they really knocked it out of the park in so many ways and gave I think a lot of people who are on the fence about games like that a
mm,
way in a way that
mm.
nobody else was giving it. In to my girlfriend's point, right? She'll watch me play JRPGs and stuff,
Yeah.
but like I said, like one of her big things is she has a more grittier tone to the
Yeah.
games that she likes, like Fallout, stuff like that. She's like, when I play a dude, I want it to look like a dude.
Yeah.
I want facial hair and gruff, and I want this great looking world, and she
Agreed.
enjoyed every minute of it, right? And I don't disagree with her.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even joke, and she'll come in and be like, that character looks like a girl, and I'm like, I can't even refute that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not even, because that's a very anime thing, right?
Yeah.
And she's just like, I want a certain aesthetic to my games, and it's like
Mm,
I'm so grateful they did what they did because it showed how an aesthetic change.
mm.
Obviously, there's tons of other stuff they did amazing. Like I don't want to just do the
No.
aesthetics, but the aesthetic is one thing that got a lot of people to look at the game, to just
Yeah.
look at it and consider it. And it
Yeah.
was my girlfriend's very first turn-based RPG, and
Yeah.
she platinumed it. She 100% it. She loved it. Like that is
Mm,
something. Like you got to understand what that's like for someone who doesn't even play these games to want to go that extra mile. And even BRAP, like now playing it again a second time, I'm going back, even though I bought it, the Lumiere edition on PlayStation, I'm going back
mm,
on my PC and I'm playing it on Game Pass. Like this game is really, really up there in a way that just moves the genre in a way that I think is very, very important, and to show a lot of publishers,
yeah.
and developers that there's a hunger for this genre if you do it right, and you don't have to do it like it's Dragon Quest 11.
No.
You
No.
can
So
you can do it in so many ways.
I don't want to speak before I go on to Clarity. I just want to one
Hmm.
of your comments. There's a guy. He's like, oh, the CPU is par on Zen 2. I just want to clarify. So when you say Zen 2, there's multiple different CPUs that use Zen 2. So that in itself is too much of a broad statement. But if you go online right now to that person, I think his name is Capo or something, right? Type in Core i9 13900K versus Ryzen 7 3700X, which is broadly roughly equivalent to the PS5
Hmm.
CPU. Have a look at the gaming benchmarks between those two CPU. Have a look at the general use benchmarks between those two CPU. The i9 bodies the PS5 equivalent CPU. So you saying, "Oh, it's not the equivalent," whatever. I don't know what he's talking about. In every game.
Maybe he was taught, because I was saying what's in my computer, which is a
Oh,
13900K.
oh,
Maybe
okay, okay.
maybe he's conflating the comment that I was saying is equivalent when I was just describing
Oh,
my
okay, okay.
experience
Oh,
and the
okay, okay.
overhead about how I over design my
No,
computer in
no.
order to
I
give me
think
the
I think
experience.
he's
Yeah.
talking about me because he says nib stick to talking about
Oh,
this
okay.
like you're clueless on CPUs, but clearly
Oh,
he
okay.
is.
Yeah,
He
that's
is
weird.
clueless. So yeah, to that dude Capano or whatever, go and Google it right now. The benchmarks between those CPUs in games, and then get back to me. All right, you might be
Yeah,
educated
I
on
was gonna
something.
say that's very different. And you're not wrong. Like when
Yeah,
people tell me, like I ask them what CPU they got for their computer, and they're like, "Oh, I got a Ryzen 9," and I'm like, "Which one?"
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like
like,
that when you say that, it doesn't. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. And yeah, Z2, the Z2 we're talking about. When he said the Z2, that's the APU in the Ryzen ROG Ally. So he's talking about two different things, I think. I'm not sure. I think maybe he got confused between the conversation about the ROG X Ally and the PS5 versus the Digital Foundry build rig.
Yeah, I think that's where he got confused.
Yeah, possibly. But anyway, on Expedition 33, like I'm really glad you brought up the points you did. Because like my favorite game of all time is a JRPG, right? It's Final Fantasy VII, the original OG. So I'm not like averse to the sort of like exaggerated campy nature of like JRPGs. In fact, I really love it. It can be very endearing. It can be, you know, like it has a certain quality to it and a certain like fun factor and vibrancy to characterization, which can be really enjoyable, right? But I got to say, like for me, Expedition 33, Claire Obscura Expedition 33, it kind of does with in the RPG sphere kind of what and I know some people will say Final Fantasy did it already, but for me this does it better. It kind of like what like Red Dead Redemption 2 or Last of Us and stuff do in the cinematic space. Like it has such nuanced, grounded and realistic feeling and sounding characters, like the way they behave, the way they talk, the way, you know, like they just, it's such realism to the way they interact with each other and engage.
I agreed.
Yeah, and it's sometimes they don't even say much. It's like really nuanced that they might even not say anything at all. It's just the way they're animated, the way they're looking at each other, the sadness or contemplation that they have. And yeah, I feel like that kind of writing and acting pedigree is throughout the entire game, and it gives it a really grounded and impactful kind of sense of presence throughout the entire game. And I genuinely like I gave it a 10 out of 10. And there's only two other games I've given it a 10 out of 10 this generation. So it's like, for me, it's a big thing. I very seldom give out 10s, but it was just such a phenomenal game. And I really, really loved the combat as well. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. And I know it's far from the first game to do this like kind of timing based RPG combat. Hell, even bloody Mario RPG did it. But it's the execution, it's the implementation, the way they've executed it, the flair, the kind of incredible animations and opponents, and it was so fun for me. And the reward when you like master the timings and you're just pulling off parries like without even thinking, you know, like bam bam boom boom parry parry parry, and you're pulling off these elaborate like counters and stuff. It's just amazing. From start to finish, that game really captivated me. And I almost felt like from the very beginning I knew it would, because even that opening, the kind of dynamics,
that opening was intense.
Yeah, like so good. But yeah, no, what an amazing game. Took me by surprise. One of the things, like I've said with Game Pass and Xbox, I know it's not an Xbox game, but one of the things I said was, even though I've had Game Pass since 2017, I've never had a single game on Game Pass that has been like my game of the year, or really been that noteworthy. There's been some close ones like Hi-Fi Rush, and Indiana Jones was solid as well, but nothing. And again, I know this is not an Xbox game, but I played it through Game Pass, and I'd be completely shocked if it didn't end up being my game of the year. But yeah, just superb. Like, and I do think Game Pass, funny enough, this year has been like,
it has been really good,
really rewarding, dude. Like,
it has
like I probably played it more in this year than I have in many years. And I
was gonna say, this might be the best, at least for me, in my opinion, might be the best year for Game Pass.
Yeah, and I know what some people will say, like, oh, that's a you problem. It is a you problem, because the thing is, like, maybe you're the same. I don't know if you guys do this, right? I don't play games for the sake of playing them because they're on a subscription service, right? I actually have. Yeah, I don't care about spending money on games. My priority, and the thing that's limited, is not money, it's time. So I'm very selective of what I play. Like, if I play a game, I ideally want it to be either something that, because of the trailers, previews, or whatever, deeply personally appeals to me. Maybe it's the art direction, maybe it's the music or whatever, the visuals, or like has a much higher chance of being a quality game. So yes, I understand that Game Pass has a huge library, or PS Plus, Premium has a huge library, but I'm not just going to randomly play games just like I have time to waste. Like I'm going to be playing only the games I'm really excited to play or interested to play. And I would say on that side of things, this year, like Game Pass has been, tremendous, or at least the last maybe 8-9 months.
The last couple of months have been really good. And Priscilla has also had it on PC for the first time in a while, and she's been like, "Oh, it just keeps on giving." And we were telling her about the altars before we left, because today's her birthday. So happy birthday, Priscilla, to tell her on stream. But
happy birthday.
I'll have to let her know you say happy birthday.
Make sure you go out, get her another 5090 liquid cool,
right?
Radiator.
She's spoiled. She's taken her Switch 2 back from me, and now she's deciding that she likes Bravely Default currently. So surprisingly, shout out to Claire for doing God's work and getting her to play another JRPG. She's loving it.
Someone in your chat asked a question, right? Are we talking Claire Obscure spoilers, or is this spoiler free?
No. We were spoiler free.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, I can't answer that question. It is an interesting question, and I would have liked to give but we can't really go into it.
Yeah, I know. I actually wanted BRAP, but I didn't think he could make it because he had too many other things going on. But we did a spoiler cast with Logic. We had Logic there, and Logic was it's so funny, bro. Because you know how Logic is. Yeah. It's so funny to see Logic so emotionally invested and just so excited to talk about something, because he gives you so much crap for that, BRAP.
Yeah,
like being super excited about some of the games, but he was so excited, man. That spoiler cast was amazing, bro.
I do want to do a spoiler cast because playing the second playthrough has really opened up the game to me even more. Like now I'm like,
you're a bit quiet, by the way, bro.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say I do want to do a spoiler cast because the second playthrough has really opened up more of the story for me. Like I like, oh, okay, like now I get this, or now I didn't see this before. Now this makes sense. So I definitely want to talk about or do a spoiler cast, because
if I'm available, bro, I'll definitely be there. I'll tell you that now. I'll do it again. And we're gonna do one for our own podcast, and I'll still do it again because it's that profound and it is that much to talk about. Like just to give you guys an example, this isn't a spoiler, but like one of talking about what someone chose had to do with like the death of like a family member to them. Like that's how close and how much it made them think, and they were like, man, like I'm like, yeah, it was dark, but it was like, we all started crying, and we were like, man, like, dang, we didn't know you were gonna go that deep, like, because I mean, for him, it was like, I never really thought about the passing of this. In this case, it was their mother, right? Which we all know how we are with our mothers, right? And it was like, he was like, it brought it back. I felt like I compartmentalized it. And I thought, what would I do if given the choices in Expedition 33?
Oh, God, yeah.
And it was my mother, and how I lost her. And I was like, man, we all started crying. We're like, man, that's not fair, bro. You can't pull the heartstrings like that.
That is the beauty of gaming. Like I think a lot of times we don't celebrate enough the emotional impact that gaming can have. There's a few games I can think of where I had that. Like I literally was, and I talked to Logic about it. Like Logic and I were talking about the choices we made in that game and why we made those choices. There's very few games that do that.
Yeah,
and that do that well.
So I mean, again, without spoilers, like that is crazy, by the way, but it's awesome. It reminds me of this video I watched about God of War, and basically she had a very turbulent relationship with her father before he passed away, and she was saying basically after she played the game, she realized he wasn't what she had a memory of in her mind. He was just a bit like Kratos in the sense that hard love was his way of showing love, if that makes sense. And after playing the game, she was kind of broken. And when she reflected on all the moments she spent with him, she realized, oh my God, like he wasn't actually an asshole. I mean, he was an asshole in the same way Kratos is an asshole, but it was like an endearing asshole. Like he's just,
Yeah.
you know, he was brought up with that kind of toxic masculinity where he's trying to make you tough for the world, but doesn't realize that can negatively impact you. Anyway, it's a whole other thing. But
which is
again,
kind of an interesting dynamic between Atreus and him, by the way. Which we oh my
yeah,
god,
yeah. I mean, again, we could talk on that. We could talk on that for ages as well.
Atreus pushes back on that.
But yeah, but the ending of Claire Expedition 33, I kind of felt I made the wrong decision. And I remember when I made it, to make it, I mean, it's just a game, and obviously, like it doesn't really matter, right? It's immaterial. But after I made the decision, and you know, a certain character, it's just how they react and how they look at you and stuff. And when the fallout of your decision starts dawning on you, it's like when you've made a really important decision and you maybe haven't thought it through all the way. And then I was so devastated. I was like thinking about it for so long. I was thinking about it for several days. I was like, oh fuck. But then the in my head I was having like an internal, I even spoke to my wife about it. Like, here's the scenario. In this situation, what do you do? And why do you do it? And you know, like there was underpinnings with like even like the Joel decision with Ellie and stuff like that. And obviously people
we talked about that on the spoiler
cast.
cast.
Yeah. And it's like, but this actually had more of an emotional impact on me. But yeah,
absolutely, because I didn't care at the end of
yeah.
At the end of that.
So I think,
well, because they take the agency away from you, like they make the decision for you, whereas this one is on you, right? So the whatever consequences there are, you kind of feel a bit personally, responsible for. But yeah, I remember like it really like affected me. I was like, oh my God, like I made the wrong decision. I damned like so many people, and you know, like it was really fucking me up. But yeah, obviously, like you just go back and make a different decision. But it's the power of like storytelling, and I do love the fact that like the story in Expedition 33 was so creative, and hats out to the writer, like the main writer. This is her first major production writing work.
wow.
Literally, the director, there's I don't know what the site is called, but basically creators, they put their like short stories and long stories like for the public to read on this website, and he was like a fan of her work, and he hired her because of that. And this is her first major gig, and she absolutely destroyed it. Likewise with with the music as well, which I listen to literally in my car, like you know, all the time. Yeah. Again, like he found the guy on the team on SoundCloud, just really enjoyed them and hired them, and you know, what standout work. And that speaks to Claire Expedition 33. I know there's a lot of conversation about like how did they do this, like, you know, with such low budget, low manpower, whatever. And I think it's like when and some AAA studios have this as well, where they say like in the making ofs, where like if instead of it's just like a creator who dictates everything, right, like a director who dictates everything, if instead it's more of like an organic process where if someone has an idea they're really passionate about, and you know they're you know it's a good idea, let them take the reins on implementing that particular thing, and then you get more of like a cohesive development where all the different components that are going into your game are like mini passion projects. The people who are doing it, this is their baby, this is their idea, they love this. And I kind of feel like Expedition 33, that is the entire game, where every person has had like a pivotal thing, something, you know, that they grew up with that was key to them, like for example the world map and how it used to be in Final Fantasy 7, etc., with the airship and the chocobos and all the rest of it. And it's like they wanted to put their own spin on that because it's so nostalgic to them. And then this, and then the music and the writing, and it's kind of like just a collection of passion projects from developers who are so deeply ingrained in the work that they're doing that coming together, it just, you know, it just excels. So yeah, like you know, hats off to Sam for their first game, and it's of this pedigree. Like they are going to be the one to watch out for in future. my only concern, and like it's just a me thing, is I hope now that they have way more money and they'll probably expand and everything like that, they don't just go super big with the next game and they maintain that like pacing elegance, because I find a lot of like RPGs and a lot of games, bigger is not always better, and sometimes less is more. And I just hope they maintain that like tight story structure and everything. Yeah.
I agree with you only because I listened to a lot of the making of, and I know we got to get out of here, Brad. I don't want to hold you. But yeah, I listened to the making of, and they talked about how the nimbleness was a big part of why the game is what it is.
Mhm.
And that passion that you spoke about is another big reason. And you can hear from each of the developers in a lot of the making of videos. And there's a documentary coming out about the game as well, by the way, about the making of the game. So that's going to be amazing. But you can hear a lot of them talk about, like you said, their favorite JRPGs growing up. Like
There we go,
almost pretty much everybody on this team, except say maybe the dog, are big JRPG fans that grew up playing the games that we all talk about that we love. Like you said, Xenogears, the Parasite Eves, the Final Fantasy 7s, 8, 9s, 10s.
I heard even Lost Odyssey.
Yeah, Lost Odyssey. Like they grew up playing these games and said, hey, we got together with a group of people who also are in games, who may or may not have made one. We all had this passion for this project, and we all put it all together, and this is what you got in the end. And it's like you said, but like and I think they'll be real careful, like you said, just because he was like, our ability to pivot and move the whole team to this, from this to this, is because we were so small. We didn't have a ton of overhead. We don't got to see Rob, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike every time we do something. And this is our game. And Kepler just said, if it's not about making the game fun, don't do it. And that was all they got from them. And here's the money. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think that we'll be very careful in going forward and give us something really incredible in the future.
Man, it took me by storm. And like, even though I knew it had good reception on Meta and stuff like that, I didn't really pay attention to the reviews, because I think it was like, this is a cheaper game. I know I played it on Game Pass, but I wouldn't have blinked at buying it. It was kind of one of those, they're charging little for it anyway. Like, it's worth just a stab in the dark. But yeah, when a game like completely exceeds all your expectations, it's such a great feeling. And then like hunkering down and lying to your wife about work that you have to do. Like, I'm doing trading, babe. The market's really volatile right now. Like, I need to stay up all night. Like, I hope she doesn't watch this. Like. And there's me like playing Claire Expedition non-stop, and then like not sleeping and having to drop my kid off to school like half asleep, like well, not half asleep, but like tired. Luckily we just walk. But yeah, it's just it's a funny thing, like, and it's very seldom that games captivate me in that way. And yeah, what a stellar game. And it's been a really good year, right? The games in general. And we've got Death Stranding 2 around the corner. I'm playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 now. I just finished Split Fiction. That shit was amazing as well. Like, oh my God, like, great game. The ending, like, sequence. Have you played that, either of you?
No, I haven't played it. No, it's, his Joseph Ferris, his team. I mean, they are, I have a great appreciation for their games. I have not played it. I mean, I did. It's funny. I played the last game they released. I forgot the last.
It Takes Two.
Parents. It Takes Two. And I played it with my son. It was such a great experience to play it with my son.
Have you played Split Fiction?
Yeah, I've played it. It was actually my game of the year before Expedition 33.
Oh, there we go. And you know the funny thing is,
and I thought no one could top it, and I was oh, there's no way. I've never played level design like this in my life.
Oh, dude. That final level, what the hell? Me and my brother-in-law were in a state of disbelief. I mean, we're gamers. I played thousands of games. Like,
well, that's what's impressive is about both of these games. They both do something we haven't seen yet, and and yet we've gamed for so long. That is impressive.
So impressive. It's like,
gentlemen,
you gotta head out.
Yeah, I got to head out.
Yeah, no, you're good.
We're getting close to midnight here, but no, you know what? I definitely would do a spoiler cast for Claire Expedition. So if
Yeah, like I said, just let me know, man.
I'm
Nate,
down.
you
I'm
guys-
down.
Yeah, if you're up for it, let's figure it out a time. And yeah, I really I want to get everyone's perspective. It's such a good game. So, but Adib, I don't know if you want to be found on social media, but if you do, let everyone they can find you as well. I know I gave you Nate the opportunity as well, so for you, this is
yeah, just on X. It's just NIB95_. That's it.
Nate, I think you gave your Twitter handle, right? I think I asked
Yeah,
you
that was my
earlier.
Twitter handle. Yeah, sorry, X Twitter.
No,
Yeah,
Yeah, I did.
Nate,
I
yeah,
did.
okay, perfect. All right.
Yep, we're all good.
All right, perfect. Again, thank you everyone for hanging out with us for the last 3 hours and 41 minutes. I really appreciate the time. I know, well, some of you are probably gaming while you're listening. I know others could be gaming while you're listening. So thank you. Please do the YouTube thing, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification. And yeah, we're going to do a spoiler cast on Claire Expedition or Claire Obscure Expedition 33. So if you played that game, just keep an eye out for that podcast. I got to figure out when I'm going to schedule it, but something that's gonna happen too. It's gonna be a spoiler cast. So again, thank you to the guests, Nate and Nib, and to the listeners. We'll catch you next time.
yes.